Your sitting is resumed. Honourable Member for St. Lucie.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I rise today to make a small contribution to this very important debate, and I want to certainly express my appreciation to the Honourable Member for Christchurch South, who has...
Christchurch West.
Christchurch South.
Christchurch South?
Who has given me the space to speak at this time, Mr. Speaker, sir, since I have another important engagement in the constituency of St. Lucie that I must attend to. This debate, this resolution is very, very important. These amendments come at a time, Mr. Speaker, when we seek to push Barbados forward as a government, and in doing so, or before we do so, Mr. Speaker, we are ensuring that the correct framework and everything is in place that we can move forward as a country to take Barbados where we want it to go over the next couple of years, Mr. Speaker. The document outlines plans and amendments, Mr. Speaker, that are comprehensive, well thought out, far-reaching as we move forward. And my speech has been a bit altered, Mr. Speaker, when I heard the Honourable Member for St. Michael South Central. And I would quote, Mr. Speaker, and these are words which are very, very important. When she mentioned, the Honourable Member mentioned and spoke to the orderly development of our country. This is absolutely important. We've had a country moving forward, and people, Mr. Speaker, were not sure what to do or how to do it, if they're doing the right thing, and there seemed, Mr. Speaker, in some instances to be one rule for the Medes and another rule for the Persians. And, you know, so this amendment in this plan here, we want to thank the Honourable Member for Christchurch West for bringing it, and the team that so assisted him, Mr. Speaker, for bringing this great document, which, as quoted by the member for St. Michael South Central, lends to the orderly development of our country. Now, nobody now can speak once this becomes law. It becomes the handbook, the blueprint for how we should do things. And nobody will then can then truthfully say them unfair me over the other person. And so once these rules are being followed as they should be, Mr. Speaker, then we all can recognize that we have a stake and as we move forward in this country. It speaks to land use, it speaks to transportation. Transportation is important not just to persons in the country or in the rural areas, Mr. Speaker, because we in the rural areas perhaps we have more room to do a number of things than those in the city and the urban areas. For instance, we have a lot of bicycle space, and we would want that we not just only speak of the measures being put in place, but creating these areas where people can have good physical exercise in terms of being able to ride, cycling, space for the cyclists, space for the persons who like to walk, because very often in the country where I live and where I represent, you often find, Mr. Speaker, persons walking alongside the road, you know, exercising early mornings, late evenings, and we have to make provision, to be quite honest, Mr. Speaker, for these persons to be able to do their physical activity, which will lead to healthier living and longevity, I believe, Mr. Speaker. We have to make space for these persons that they may be able to carry out such activity. There are persons, Mr. Speaker, even in the urban areas In the urban areas, we talk here of to promote the development of mixed-use communities. There are some people who believe that only this should happen in my community. I don't like this, and they often cause tension between different groups and so on. This physical development plan makes provision for misuse so that the commercial, the cultural, all persons, all areas, all agencies, all sectors have a stake and can operate in the same space, Mr. Speaker. Importantly as well is the housing. Housing is important for any and almost every country. You got to be able to house your people. You got to be able to provide for them. But it must be done, as the Honourable Member, and I love that statement, it must be done in an orderly fashion, in an orderly manner. There are people who believe that they can set up or go and build and do what they have to do, even though, because you know, Mr. Speaker, what they say, the land is mine. Correct, the land is yours. But a country has its laws, it has its rules, which must be adhered to. And once you are following these rules, once you are following these laws, Mr. Speaker, you cannot go wrong. This is a document which has a vision, where there's a vision, where the vision for sustainable development and growth is outlined. And that is what we need, that is what we want, Mr. Speaker, in this country. And because without this, you cannot or you would not encourage investment. When people come to invest, these are the rules. This is the handbook which you need to go by. And you cannot make any sort of mistake. There's no ifing and butting where that is concerned, because it is written into the laws of our country. And Mr. Speaker, as I said, I want to commend those persons who added to this, who were instrumental in having this document prepared, Mr. Speaker, so that we as a country can move forward on the right footing, in the right direction. It speaks to, Mr. Speaker, the efficient use of land, the resources that we have, proper use of our finances. Speaks to equity, social equity, Mr. Speaker, health, safety for all residents. All these are very important as you develop a country as a government, as you seek to push your country forward, because you don't put, sometimes, you know, there have been governments which we sometimes are quite familiar with, who either did nothing, or put the cart before the horse. Here, Mr. Speaker, we are ensuring that we have all the ducks lined up in one row. And Mr. Speaker, that when we move from this point today, when this resolution is passed, that people know without doubt how they should move forward. But I say, Mr. Speaker, sir, is it perfect? Of course it may not be perfect, because as a country develops, there are new things that come and come along, and there are other changes that you may have to make with that development. So we cannot wait for the perfect time or the perfect opportunity or everything to be in place, Mr. Speaker, to then bring the plan. We have done so, Mr. Speaker, with it. We have made the amendments that perhaps persons call for, because we see that there were consultations, etc. And we have included those things, Mr. Speaker, which persons would have queried or which person would have been concerned about. And as we go forward, Mr. Speaker, there may be other things that come to the fore. But it is important that we do not just wait on all those things, that we push and move forward. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, I am in full support of this resolution. And I commend the Honourable Minister and his team, as I said, for having the fortitude, the bravery, the guts to do what they have to do. And from time to time, you will get other criticisms. But this government is one that takes the lead and moves forward in what we have to do. And something else comes up, we will come back. If we need to revisit and add or tweak in any way, I believe that I know that we are a government that will do that. So, Mr. Speaker, with those few words, I want to support this resolution. Thank you.
Honourable Member for Christchurch South.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I received a copy of this physical development plan this morning, and there was not enough time to read the entire document, but of course I must pause and congratulate those who are responsible for the authorship of the document. But I would have been derelict in my duty if, as the representative for the constituency that contains Oistins, I did not rise to my feet and say something about Oistins as reflected upon in the document. And therefore, I took the time and I took the care to read what the authors said about Oistins. Now, whenever we are confronted by words and technical words, we often have some difficulty of interpretation. Indeed, different people different people interpret the same language in different ways. And this document describes itself as a physical development plan. And it is that word, development, that becomes an embattled area of language. What does development mean? The medical people will tell us that someone developed a disease. The economists will tell us about the phenomenon of a developing country. And there we have the word develop, connoting positively and connoting negatively. So that we come to this thing called a physical development plan. What really do we mean by the word development? I think we need to indicate to the public that classically, development as a positive concept would refer to growth, it would refer to progress, and it would refer to positive change. Of course, Your Honor, we often confuse the word growth. Not the word growth, we often confuse the word development with modernization. And modernization, as far as I can see it, refers to things or phenomena made new according to new standards and new ideas. And we always have to be careful to remind ourselves and to remind the public that development and modernization are two different concepts. It is probably cliched language to say that we may modernize without developing. And this document describes itself as a physical development plan. And the use of the word physical would indicate to the public that development in this context is exclusively physical. It is insofar as we may come to believe that it is about roads and buildings and other physical, non-human phenomena. I suspect, though, Your Honor, that in looking at this thing called a physical development plan, we must extend the document, or we must extend the immediate meaning of the document to embrace the human factor, since physical development means nothing unless it embraces the human factor. Let me illustrate in this way. When I copied Section 9 on Oistins, on which I will speak exclusively. I also copied, I think it's Section 11 on warrens. And I must indicate to you, sir, that warrens as a burgeoning physical infrastructure quite fascinates me for a number of reasons. I sometimes wonder if warrens has not grown independently of the persons who used to live in Oistins, in warrens, I beg your pardon, and still live there. I sometimes wonder if warrens has not been a physical development that has occurred independently, and I go as far as to say, in spite of the people who live in warrens. In other words, has warrens been a development that has embraced the interests of persons who live in the environs? That would be Lodge Hill, warrens, perhaps one could go even as far as the Queen's College area. And it fascinates me in terms of property values, how has warrens, the commercial warrens, affected their property values? How has it affected their comfort, the comfort that they have derived from living in what was previously designed to be a quiet suburb? How do they now relate to this burgeoning commercial conurbation that we know as warrens? I must confess to you, sir, that warrens does not appeal to me aesthetically. It does not appeal to me as a zone of peace and comfort. I have always seen warrens as an explosion of buildings, roadways, heat, discomfort, and not to offend anyone, but I wonder how much planning went into warrens to embrace the interests of people who live nearby, of people, the pedestrian traffic. Indeed, it is almost impossible to become a pedestrian in warrens. And therefore, that is a development, Your Honor, that has not quite embraced the human factor, has not quite embraced the interests of humanity in a way that we would want our towns and commercial centers so to do. So I say to you, Your Honor, that warrens fascinates me not for the positive aspects of its development, but for what it has done to impede social life within that space. You drive through warrens. You don't walk through warrens. You don't get out of your car and take a stroll through warrens. And that is one of the differences that would present when one compares a warrens, which is to say a commercial center, with a town, Bridgetown, or our beloved Oistins. And so I've said all of that to indicate, Your Honor, that there is a fundamental and essential difference between a town in terms of character and identity. There's a difference between a town and a commercial center. Warrens, although it fascinates me, remains at this point a commercial center that is bereft and naked of any development that seeks to embrace humanity. Now, having said that, that would indicate to you, Your Honor, that I am prepared to move this document beyond a document that is exclusively physical, a physical development plan. We cannot and we will not and we must not have a physical development plan unless it embraces the interests of humankind. Now, how do we do this? I speak for Oistins. I speak on behalf of Oistins at this time. And how do we, in Oistins, respond to the promised physical development so eloquently spoken about by my colleague, the Honourable Member for Christchurch West? How do we relate the proposed physical development to the human interests. The point we are making is that development, even physical development, even development that describes itself as physical, must relate itself to issues of culture. A town derives its identity not from buildings and cars and trees and houses. A town derives its identity from people and the activity of those people. I give a very short history of Oistins. I read section 9, I beg your pardon, of the document, and it spoke to the history of Oistins, it spoke to the character of Oistins, and there is a portion that describes future plans as tourism-oriented. Tourism-oriented. There's good in that and there's danger in that. I will insist, Your Honor, that Oistins, for as long as there is an Oistins, must not lose the identity, must not lose its identity as a fishing town. And that expresses itself on the coastal side of that main street. Now, Oistins is a very narrow corridor, a very narrow urban corridor. Bridgetown is expansive. The commercial center called Warrens is expansive. Whole town, if they wish, can move to the east. Oistins is enclosed by that escarpment, and that's how the document describes it, as an escarpment that basically defines the physical borders of Oistins. It is a narrow coastal corridor, one street, except that there are a few side streets, Welch's and Scarborough and Ashbyland. But Oistins, by geographical definition, is a very small stretch, a very narrow corridor of land along the Christchurch portion of Barbados. And on that coastal side, this is how Oistins has been defined historically. You will find the boatyard. And these are significant locations in Oistins that give Oistins that identity that allows us to call it Oistins and allow us to know what we are talking about when we talk about Oistins. We are talking about a fishing village which became a town. So there's the boatyard. I am told a story when I was first campaigning in Oistins, and this story is worthy of being told. One of the fishermen told me that the former representative, Sir Harold St. John, a proposal was put to him that they should fence the boatyard in. And he said, no. You cannot fence the boatyard in. The boatyard must remain an organic feature of the general landscape of Oistins. So he was not really discussing a fence. He was discussing the organic relationship between an industry and people who visit the town and people who live in the town. And that was the significance of the boatyard, that it gave largely Oistins its identity. Fishermen, a very special category of Barbadians. When we talk about free men in this country, we must pause and remember that our fishermen were among the first people who expressed freedom, economic and cultural freedom. They went out to sea. Nobody could stop them. And they fished. So they expressed commercial freedom before a lot of the other people in this country. And so you could not make that an exclusive physical zone. Symbolically and organically, it had to remain accessible to those other persons who lived and visited Oistins, so that the boatyard is symbolic of what Oistins really means to that portion of Christchurch and what it means to Barbados. Immediately next to that is the market, the Berinda Cox market. Again, an identity establishing itself in the boatyard and stretching immediately to the fish market. So that the business, the central business of Oistins, the character of the town relates itself to fishing. And in more modern times, and now more famously, is the Bay Garden. All connected, all interdependent on the other. The fishermen bring the fish, they trade that fish, they sell that fish to those in the fish market, and those in the fish market sell that fish, I assume, to the Bay Garden people and to people all over Barbados. That, Your Honor, is Oistins. That stretch of beach, it is almost a beach, a beautiful beach too, but that has given Oistins its identity, its character. And on the other side of the road, there's Welch's, there's Scarborough, and there's Ashby Land. I mention those separately and deliberately because that is where the people live. Literally, Your Honor, on the other side of the street. And those were people who did not leave there and go to St. Joseph, St. Lucy, St. Peter, to any other parish. They found and they made their living within Oistins as fishermen, as fish vendors, in all manner of retail shops, grocery shops, rum shops, all kinds of businesses that emerged and allied themselves to that central aspect of the Oistins culture, the fishing culture. And that is how a town becomes constituted, not by buildings, not by roadworks, not by trees, but by the interaction of human beings with their physical environment. And that is how a culture emerges and develops and calls itself a culture and calls itself a town called Oistins Town. And therefore, we come to the physical development plan. Now, I fail to say to you, Your Honor, that beyond the Bay Garden, if we take a walk farther up the street, is the Civic Center. And happily, I've spoken several times on this with the Honourable Member for, the very congenial Honourable Member for Christchurch West, who has piloted this resolution in here today, and he has given me lots of information and lots of assurances as to the destiny of that Civic Center. I read the document and it spoke in the present tense as to the library. That is no longer the present tense. One of the tragedies of Oistins is that the young people of Oistins, and indeed they used to come as far as from St. Philip and St. John to use that library and to study. I put a proposal to then the former member for Christchurch, for St. Philip West. In writing, I wrote a proposal in relation to that civic center, that library, and I will now seize the opportunity to say publicly that I had proposed the establishment of a museum of the Barbadian arts in that space. Calypso, folk, dance, folk music, which is our best music, incidentally. And I had written a proposal to him then, and unfortunately, we have never been able to bring it to fruition. But my friend from Christchurch West now tells me that that entire civic area is to be relocated to the other side of the street to be replaced by hotel development, including the bus stand, the bus terminal. That pleases me, and I'm sure that will please the citizenry of Oistins. except, Your Honor, that the citizenry of Oistins do not wish to be excluded ever from any physical development plan that attains that town. It is good that you relocate the buses to the other side of the street, because it is the most inefficient use of a landscape to have buses leaking diesel on a beachfront. That is a promontory of great beauty. I can see benches out there and the senior citizens of Oistins looking out at the sea and on the boats on evenings. So I say to the Honourable Member for Christchurch West, the development is welcome, but please do not commit the mistake that lots of developers commit, that when you come into an area of local knowledge, when you come into an area of people who have lived for 90 and 95 years without consulting them as to physical development, without consulting them as to the mores, the attitudes, the values, that identity that makes the town what it is. Consult with them before you consult even with the engineers. And so, speaking on behalf of the citizens, I call them citizens, because in a real sense they are tied to Oistins with great depth. They are organically tied to Oistins with greater meaning than any building that may be in Oistins. You can pull down a building, but we defy any developer to pull down the people of Oistins who have given that town its identity. And so the boatyard must remain. And so the market must remain. And so the Bay Garden must remain. And we are happy that we have in Oistins a supermarket that is more beautifully located than any supermarket in Barbados. You walk out of a supermarket and you're looking at one of the most beautiful beaches in the Caribbean, an oasis. The young people of Oistins would want me to say to you, Your Honor, that they for a long time have been deprived of recreational facility. When I first went there, a group of little boys, they're probably now in their late teens, and some of them are men, and they used to play football on the lawn opposite the supermarket. I noticed they've disappeared. From that, I don't know where they play. But this physical development plan extends the borders of Oistins up to Foundation School and to the Christchurch Parish Church. And you and I know, Your Honor, from our days of youth, that there was always some tension between those who managed schools and the people in the villages who had clubs. You're holding your club meeting on Friday night, and you often had this battle with the watchman. Can I get the key to get into the school hall to hold the club meeting? I don't know what is the position at Foundation, but as public facilities, schools must be used after 3 p.m. for the benefit of the taxpayers of this country. And it cannot be impossible to work out a system where the young men, potential athletes of Oistins, can express themselves and can become great athletes, not only in Barbados, not only in the Caribbean, but across the world. I would hope, since we are coastal, we are restricted in Oistins. There is now, and I say this in the hearing of my friend from Christchurch West, we confess, we admit that there is now no space to build a playing field in Oistins. And I want to say to you, sir, the closest we came to that a few years ago, we persuaded a resident of Ashby Land. If I sound as if I'm boasting, I am. We persuaded a resident of Ashby Land to donate on loan, not to convey, you're a conveyancer too, sir, to donate on loan a parcel of land which the Honourable Member for Christchurch West agreed to build a garden. They put trees down, they put benches down, and they put grass down. One evening after it rained, a few days after the garden was established, you can't stop little boys. They see a space even as half the size of this chamber. They will get a football and they will play. So I drove down there to see how our garden was growing. And I saw the boys in heavy rain running across the grass that was freshly planted, and it became mud. And I had a choice between my own popularity with these little boys or taking a principled position. I did what I hope leaders do. At the risk of offending them and sacrificing the favor that I may have enjoyed with them, I said, no, don't destroy this. This is for the old people as much as it is for you. We propose to put benches here. And the old people who worked and live and recreated in Oistins and who want a place of social ferment, let them come and use it as well. Don't destroy it. And so good were those little children that they listened to us. And my last report, haven't visited it within the last couple of weeks, but my last report is that it is thriving. I hope it is. We had some rains recently. The grass is green, the trees are growing, and there's a place in Oistins, a green area, not only for the young, but for the old. And if we favor the old in terms of the use of that small area in Ashby Land, for the first time in the history of Oistins, there was a garden created in that small community called Ashby Land. Yet, the little boys, 5, 10, 15, have nowhere to play. And I know that we live in a time when parents do not like their children to venture too far from home. So it might create some difficulty in asking or in telling an 8 or 10-year-old boy that he can walk up the hill and go on to the foundation pastor. But I say in the hearing of the Honourable Member for Christchurch West that something has to be done. A child cannot live from 4 to 14 or even 18. He cannot live that expanse of years and not have a place to recreate. He can't. It's impossible. In my day, we had the road, and we played road tennis, and we played road cricket. But in this day and age, young people will look for that area. We established an area, and we had to ask them not to express themselves. So, member, Your Honor, through you, I say to the member, let us, when we physically develop Oistins, when we consider the human interest, the human factor, let us go on to that escarpment and consider a recreational area for the young men and women of Oistins, so that they can become as good athletes as any others in Barbados. The only direction, and this is to say the only physical direction in which Oistins can expand itself, is to the east. And we have proposed to the government some 3 years ago, and I remain optimistic, as well as I remain hopeful, that these things will come to pass. That there's a large area in Carter's Gap. I think I visited that with the honorable member, yes. And we have two great, this is ironic, we have two good and great West Indian cricketers from that area, Joel Garner and Ian Bradshaw. And nobody forgets Ian Bradshaw that Saturday evening in 2004 when he square drove and won that game for the West Indies. That's the last thing we won before the T20 victories.
Right.
They're from up there. The irony, Your Honor, is that they have lived in an area that has been deprived of recreational, the existence of recreational areas.
I remember Big Bird could have played up on foundation. That's the problem. Garner could have played up on foundation. That's the only alternative that he had. He would have played from foundation.
Indeed.
Right.
You're so right, sir. He was lucky that he went to foundation. Of course, Ian Bradshaw was not lucky enough to go to your Mayor.
That is correct.
Right. But he managed to develop his talents. But we want Mr. Speaker and Honourable Member to generally ensure that physical development marries itself to culture. And that Oistins, the identity of Oistins, must remain an identity that is bound up in the identity of the people. And we have no problem with Oistins being called a fishing town. And it is because it is called a fishing town that we have attracted the attention of the world. That they tell me the Trinidadians came here and studied Oistins as a model development. Now, in the little time that I have left, I looked at the report and I was looking for a traffic management plan. And I did come across some reference to traffic management. Now, you don't call names in here, but I have a friend called Julia, a platonic friend, in the Bay Garden. And Julia and I differ on this. But I want to tell Julia that I'm going to say this in this honorable chamber. That if Oistins is growing on Friday nights to the point that it has grown, we may wish to consider a traffic management plan that creates a mall of Oistins, that stretch of road in front of the Bay Garden, and to stop the flow of traffic along that short roadway. Let the buses and cars come up, go up Oistins Hill, and come down by the church, and come back down Thornberry Hill. I know my constituency, by the way. I think we may want to consider that. So that I am trying to sell to Julia the idea that on Saturday afternoons, what is now the roadway can be cobblestone. And it can have tables and umbrellas in what is now the roadway on weekends. Not for the sake of any physical plan, but for the sake of the people. That Julia may find that she will make more money if we make of that stretch a mall, certainly on Friday nights. Because I don't see what business cars and vans have to be driving through the people's place on Friday nights when the crowd is now in the road. That should be made a ball with proper lighting, and on Monday mornings, the honorable member can drive to work with the umbrellas down, and life will return to some normalcy. Now, I will not sit unless I press the case for some of those people. There's a young man who runs a tire shop. Let the truth set us free. He is disadvantaged by a line of cars on Saturday afternoons. He runs a tire shop. He has built a tire shop next to his house. I'm not going to call his name. He started that tire shop at the age of 17. He became a businessman at the age of 17, Your Honor. I know you respect him, and I know you respect his effort. You work with young people there in the courts every day. This is a man that is working in his community every day. And he is being disadvantaged by lines of traffic going to the two fast food establishments in Oistins. If there's to be any progressive traffic plan, If the word development is to mean anything, young Zamali or the clients of young Zamali must have fair access to his establishment, which is just up the street behind one of the fast food restaurants. If I am to lose points for telling the truth, let them take the points, the political points. But the people of Oistins must have a stake in the landscape of Oistins. And the other one up the road is equally a problem. That there are lines of cars. I don't know, Barbadians are eating now more fast food than anybody else in the world. They can continue to do that. And I'm pleased, member, and I'm pleased, Mr. Speaker, that the development plan speaks to the management of traffic in a way that alleviates that main roadway. And not only to alleviate the main roadway, but to cease to visit disadvantage on young Zamali, who has a tire shop in Oistins. I have no problem calling his name in here. He is worthy of his name being called in here in defense of his right, interests, and entitlements as a businessman like any other. So if I'm to lose political points, I sacrifice them for the sake of truth, for the sake of justice, and for the sake of the interests of a young man who was born in Oistins. His navel string is in Oistins. And he has as much right as any other to ply his trade, to conduct his business. How can a man have a flat tire fixed if the car can't get to the tire shop? And young Zamali has had to walk out to the roadway and meet his clients on the roadway and sometimes in the boatyard. That is not fair, that is not right. If we are talking physical development, let us marry and harmonize that physical development with the interests of humankind. And mine is a voice in defense of the interests of the people who have lived in Oistins for generations, the people who work in Oistins from day to day, and the people who visit and recreate in Oistins. We had, in that Oistins, I don't know how much time I have left, Mr. Speaker, I'm watching your eyes.
You don't have much. You don't have any time at all.
Oh,
You've actually had more time allocated to you.
Well, I will end on this note, Your Honor. We have had in Oistins the biggest gathering of domino players any part of Barbados. I will end by saying, through you, sir, to my friend from Christchurch West, we want those domino players urgently restored to their gazebo on the beachside to the east of the Bay Garden. I am so grateful to you, sir, for the time you've extended to me to speak on physical development plans, but beyond that, to speak on culture and a developing culture and the rights, the interests, and the entitlements of the people of this country. I'm obliged to you, sir.
Honourable Member for the City of Bridgetown.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I rise obviously to give my support to this National Physical Development Plan, to support this resolution. And I start off by acknowledging to this honorable chamber and to the country that I've had the opportunity to go through the document, and it is an extremely serious document. It is a long document, 522 pages total with everything included. It's a big document, a detailed document, a complicated document at parts, but a very comprehensive document. It has the benefit of tremendous consultation with over 500 individuals contributing, and then the architects themselves being very numerous. And their names were mentioned in here this morning, and rightfully so. Those are the architects of the document. Those are the craftsmen of our faith, literally. Those are the craftsmen and women. Those are the individuals, the citizens of the country who have literally written their name on history's page, because the document known as the Physical Development Plan as amended 2023 has their name scattered throughout the document. I want to start where the honorable member from Christchurch South ended by helping people listening to this debate now or in the future to understand that this document almost could be renamed the Physical and People Development Plan, because when you look through the document, it really isn't about the development of Barbados physically, you know. It is really about development. It is a developmental document. And I want to implore Barbadians, many of who listening now may not have read it, and those definitely not listening now, definitely have not read it. But I want to implore Barbadians to take a read of this document, to download it. It's on the internet, it's on Google. I remember coming up in school, there was a saying that they would tell us, if you want to hide something from a black man, put it in a book. I remember my teachers telling me that. And sometimes you will see people getting through in life. You will see investors and business people, ideas and motivation. And usually when you check their background, you will recognize that in most cases, they are well-read. And the thing is, when you look at the document, it can be very intimidating. It can be, because as I said, it is a big document. It is a large document. It is a long document. But if I was to help to hack the process for the general population, sir, Your Honor, I would say use the table of contents first. Because the table of contents can direct you in a way where you may not have to read the whole document. But why am I encouraging people to read this document? At 522 pages, one may be tempted to see this as a high-level esoteric exercise. Lots of words, lots of maps, lots of details. So it'd be esoteric, it'd be academic, it'd be economic. But really and truly, if people want to be involved in the development of this nation, and if we want to be true to what we say in this chamber and outside of this chamber, that we are in this together, then people have to be part of the development plan of Barbados. Now, if you want to bring it down to more practicality, because I want to take this opportunity on my feet, sir, to break down a lot of what I went through in this document. I want to look and use this opportunity, even at minimum, to summarize some of what I said and to whet the appetite of Barbadians to want more from this document, from this plan. This requires us working together, and therefore we must understand it, we must buy into it, and we must have a sense of ownership of this document. This cannot be a parliamentary document. This cannot be a document of technocrats. And that is one of the main messages I want to bring from my contribution to this resolution today, sir. When you look at terms like land use, social and community use, natural heritage, historic and archaeological aspects, disaster management, these terms sometimes, again, may be a little intimidating. The document deals with climate change, addressing scarcity, building healthy communities, building out the blue and green economy, promoting sustainable development. At the end of the day, and to the right side of the equal sign, it is about people. And people have to feel that is about people. When we talk about climate change, people think that is about scientists. So when I talk about climate change to my constituents, I talk about littering and flooding because they understand that. I talk about roofs leaking because they understand that. We have got to be able to translate in a language that people understand that it is relevant to them. We used to talk about global warming, we're talking about climate change. What does it mean for you? What is in it for me is the question that a lot of people ask at the end of the day. Now, if it was to break down the document, Business Barbados, they would have an interest in this document. Barbadian investors, they would have an interest in this document because this document signals the direction of the government when it comes to development in particular zones and particular areas. So for me, Middle Barbados and Working Barbados should take equal or greater interest in the document. Now that brings me to the part where I'm really passionate about. And that's how do we create a proper, prosperous planet for our people. Let us make the connection now to people, our constituents in here. The thing that we care most about in this chamber. I believe that Barbadians should take this document and try to seek out where the opportunities are. Now, these are opportunities outside of government jobs, opportunity outside of social protection. But how can they get true opportunity? And when I think about opportunity, as I said, Business Barbados can take this and decide, I know that this is what the direction we are going, therefore I can put my investment here, I could do this, I could do that. Many people in middle class Barbados have a little two extra cents to rub together. They're always looking for something, how I could turn this over. Where can I make this investment? But you know, sometimes the thing that has killed that is we have a culture of follow pattern. Everybody in this chamber remember when pigtails used to sell. One body sell pigtails, and then everybody that's selling pigtails. Every corner had pigtails selling penny. You understand? Once, twice, 3 times a day, somebody will reach out to me. They want a taxi permit. Somebody get a taxi permit. I see members in here laughing because they know one is getting their messages too. They want to play it. So you got saturation. But one of the things I recognize from this document, and here's another hack. When you go into the document, I want you to look at the sections called permitted uses. If you go into permitted uses, what it tells you is the type of development for each area that the plan speaks to. Therefore, you would know in certain areas that start talking about water taxis and different things, you could know, look, we could find an opportunity here so that it has a wide span. And then you can see for yourself, I just use that as an example, Honourable Member. You can see for yourself. I wanted to give actual examples, but I don't want to give too much because I want to, as I said, whet the appetite of the population that they could go and see that this can be a vehicle for empowerment. You see, let me come as we move along, because the truth of the matter is, I don't even think that it's possible to do justice to this document. Even if we spoke in here, like the member for Christchurch West mentioned, for 2 days, I don't think we could do justice to the document. So I wanted to give that general call and motivation of the population to whet the appetite, to read the document, skim it, take your time, and you could find opportunities. Now, in the second part, sir, I want to look at, obviously, the city of Bridgetown. And it's a unique place in this development plan for the city of Bridgetown. In doing research for this, sir, I went back to a number of plans that we had, and I was trying to do a comparative analysis of the plan versus the execution. Now, the projections and plans never equate completely equally of what the final implementation would be. But I remember debating and discussing these particular development plans in another place. And I was introduced with this, Lord rest his soul, by Dennis DJ Johnson. And he would always tell me about these plans. Plans so old that the paper is yellow. And I had the Bridgetown development plan, and the Bridgetown redevelopment plan, and BIM, Bridgetown in motion. And Mr. Speaker, sir, as MP, what I have found myself having to do is to be approaching the office of the Prime Minister, the Ministry of Housing, different agencies, BTI, to make sure that I have a seat at the table when it comes to the development of Bridgetown. Because what a lot of people don't know is that the capital city, although I hold some responsibility, I don't really hold the authority or the management of a lot of the aspects. So when it comes to traffic and roads in the city and other places, obviously it's MTW. When it comes to certain developmental projects, it's the Barbados Tourism Investment Inc. But what I try to do on behalf of the residents of the city of Bridgetown is to make sure I have a seat at the table, and also understanding the issues and trying to be the glue in terms of some of the plans and the different agencies. And that I shall continue to do, because it's a very uncomfortable place to be, to have responsibility for something. I get many, many calls on the issue of the Corey's city a little dark. Corey city a little dirty. Corey city a little dingy. Corey city a little dangerous. You know? And every aspect of the D's that they are raising with me. And I think it's funny that those things all begin with D. But anyhow, the fact of the matter is that, when I little slow, but come on. The fact of the matter is, it is a very uncomfortable place, honestly, to have the responsibility of those things without having the mechanisms to really bring change to them. The comfort comes, though, that I'm part of an administration, that I can see clearly where we are going when it comes to these things. I can see that urban renewal and urban regeneration are not just terms that we are bandying about. And if people feel that they're blind and they want the ability to see, I invite them to go out there and understand and see the development. And sometimes it may look ad hoc, but you can draw a line and connect the dots to the development that is happening in your capital city, Barbados. You understand? You can see that the Golden Square Freedom Park has a connection now to the Heroes Square, which has a connection to the Constitution River Park. And then when you're talking culture and history and heritage, you got to talk about Queen's Park, what is being planned there in terms of where the National Cultural Foundation is on. So Barbadians need not just to hear these things, but they need to understand that there's a connection and a cohesion in terms of the direction that we are going in. And that is the point that must be made when we talk about the city, the development of Bridgetown as it relates to this Barbados National Physical Development Plan as amended 2023. Now, for me also, I have to salute the vision and the work being done, that they need to add that glue into what the Barbados Chamber of Commerce through the Bridgetown Vitalization Plan led by Mr. Eddie Abed. He's the chairman. And he has been doing lots of studies and helping me to understand the numbers and the vision. But the main point for me, and this is something that I go to sleep thinking about, and I wake up just after devotion, I put a little bit more thought to. And that's how do you connect the capital city of Bridgetown, which belongs to all of Barbados, but connect it to the empowerment of the people and the residents of the city of Bridgetown. And how that is done? Through the same word, urban renewal, that we spoke about, sir. Because as we know, we're now starting to call back that word again, World Cup. And with World Cup, sir, I can make sure that I have a seat at the table when it comes to the development of the area called Kensington Oval and its environs. Because that sometimes is the only way people get that major boost and development and something they look forward to. And I put the chamber on notice, the call and the messaging already in terms of what's going on. So you have to be in a position to know when the questions are being asked. In relation to the continued work, and the Honourable Member for St. Michael South Central mentioned it as well, in terms of the development continuing around the Constitution River and Halls Road, Ellis Village development plan and business plan, is something I'm very excited about, to work alongside with her to make sure that we, have that development project in place. But if people want to understand what is in it for me, let's talk about roof to reef and reef to roof. Let me talk about it in terms of the removal of pit toilets once and for all from this nation. In terms of sewaging and understanding that we have a responsibility for people to make sure that they have the highest standard of living that this administration is able to deliver. But we got to talk about employment and housing too. We cannot talk about the development of Bridgetown and the city without understanding that with development comes employment. I know there are people in this country, some of them that come to me up to a few days ago that talk about the debt. And I told them that there's debt and then there's debt. When you see a government taking on debt to develop, to increase the carrying capacity and the GDP and growth in a country, that is what you call proper debt. There are people that used to borrow money to pay salaries, you know that? There are people not too long ago, because we got short memories, that were taking on debt to buy toilet paper for the QEH. Current expenses. Something that is not causing us to grow up, something that is causing us barely to survive. So when we talk about what's in this for me, more employment opportunities mean more and sometimes better employment for you and your children. That is what this development plan can bring to Barbados. When we talk about housing, the Honourable Member for Christchurch West, and I am sure as the Honourable Member responsible for housing St. George South, when he speaks in this chamber, he will let you know that this administration is working around the clock, day in and day out, night in and night out, to bring housing solutions to the people in Barbados. And one major part of that, mentioned by the member for Christchurch West, who brought this resolution, is the fact that we have a lot of derelict buildings in the urban corridor, but across Barbados. We have a lot of vacant spots. And sir, people need housing solutions. So instead of getting housing solutions for vectors, for rats, rodents, and mosquitoes, what they are working on, and rightfully so, is how do we convert this environmental problem into a housing solution? Because the fact of the matter is that we have a housing crisis in Barbados. There are many people on the brink of homelessness. There are many people living in unsanitary conditions, and then you've got people that are just homeless. Just last month, in one day, I got 3 calls of people who were evicted. One from a father, one from a landlord, and one from a court martial, all on the same day. No, normally you get 1 a day. Now on that day, you get 3. So the reality is that this is not just a need from an environmental perspective, but this development plan to say that we can get special vehicles, special purpose vehicles, to convert these derelict buildings, derelict houses, unfinished houses, into housing solutions. I see houses when I was in primary school or before that was building, they were building. They ain't done build yet. They got a roof and a structure, they may not have no windows. Some of them may got a structure and no roof. Yet you got people. So I believe that, I can leave that for another debate, but I believe that housing has to be a major part on how we treat to this new physical and people development plan. I call it that. Let me call it that. Right? I know it's in there. That's why I say it is impossible to do justice to this document because of how comprehensive it really is. The fact of the matter is, as we move on, right, is the vision for this has to be understanding that all Barbadians should be able to be proud of their city. There are people who tell me they come to the city and it is extremely beautiful. Particularly when you see the aerial views and the lighting up of the city and you see those pictures and those postcards and so on. Bridgetown is one of the most beautiful waterfront cities in the world. And I ain't saying so just because it's representative. I'm saying so because I got 2 eyes and an understanding. But the reality is, on the other side, I have a friend who came to the unveiling of the monument and told me that as it unveiled, she ran away home because rats in the city too big and she's frightened. And I said, but you're a town. You can't talk about my town so. But is it so? Is she telling the truth? And people talk about the vagrants and they talk about the smell. So then in the physical development plan and the people plan now, we have to understand that we need to address all of these issues. The traffic, the roads, the cars, the pedestrians, and not just the able-bodied pedestrians. We got to talk about all-inclusive pedestrian plan that people with disabilities, that they too can access every area of the city. And that is in there too, because it can't be comprehensive without having a plan for the disabled community, because we are all-inclusive society and an all-inclusive government. Bathrooms and all these things, lights, Wi-Fi. Thank you, member for St. Michael North. The Wi-Fi project has started. If you didn't know and you haven't been to Bridgetown, there is free Wi-Fi in much of Bridgetown, and it will continue. Confirmed by the mutterings of the member to my right. You understand? So those are all things that we have to understand. And there's a vision that I have, and I actually have the drawings and so on. And that's why I need a seat at the table. Because this vision speaks about the seating and the lighting and the using the waterfront and the paddle boats, right? And the restaurants and the pop-ups, right? And the significant thing about this is that development must be connected. And understand that we complain about population. But if we can make Bridgetown by night a romantic place, that can help with the population. Help increase the population in the country. Because development must be linked. It must be a link that you can see directly and draw the lines. That you're doing this over here and it is helping over there. So those are things within the proposal. Yes. I am a leader, but I'm not planning on leading that charge, sir. Your Honor, I'm not planning to lead. I plan to develop and propose and have a seat at the table to keep pushing. Because I'm going to close with this very, very serious point on this. If you ever, but we are at the baseline, so look and see what it will be shortly. No, they can live together. They can live together. Business League members are having a lot of fun with that point. You see, but I will move on. I will move on. What a lot of people may not know is that 50% of the ground floor in Broad Street and other parts of Bridgetown is empty, it's vacant. And then when you go to the first floor, you turn out 75% vacancy. But I have a sad declaration for many people listening now. When we talk about the return and the vitalization of Bridgetown, it will not be like how it was when we were little boys and little girls. When your parents only had Bridgetown to go to come down to buy that vest and that t-shirt from Woolworth and so on. Dragging in town every Saturday and you're praying that they don't see the friends. That is not what Bridgetown will be in the future. Because the reality is not only have we built out the Warrens that the Honourable Member spoke about, built out 6 roads, we built out Sheraton, Line Grove and other malls, but there's something called eBay and Amazon. A lot of people shop online. Bridgetown must become that place where you go to, not as a place, but an experience. So when you go to Bridgetown, you got to be going for the experience. So we got to bring music and culture into Bridgetown, Honourable Member. Mr. Speaker, this is what we got to do. We got to make it a place to go because there are lots of places you can build out any city that you want. You can build out any area that you want. But at the end of the day, Bridgetown will always be Bridgetown in terms of its historic, in terms of its beauty, in terms of its significance. And now we just got to add that thing that causes a pull factor. The traffic arrangements must be right, sir. That is the point when it comes to development. And from reading the physical development plan, I get the idea and I get the comfort that the architects of it really understands what are the issues of the day. Sir, finally, I think that if I had to add anything to this plan, it would be understanding what SMART goals and SMART planning is. When we think about SMART, we talk about specific. This plan is extremely specific. You have maps that highlight every gully in this plan. You have maps that highlight every historical area, every district, every zone in this plan. You have maps that separates the Scotland district from the different height zones in this plan. You have maps that highlight the archaeological significant buildings, all 256 on the map and highlighted on the map too. It is very specific, so it passes the S. It's very measurable because you know what it is you want to do and you know when you arrive. Is it attainable? Well, we will see. Is it relevant? Extremely relevant because it speaks to where we are in this time as it relates to climate, as it relates to water, as it relates to food security. All of that is in here. It is relevant. My issue now is the last letter in SMART, which is T, which stands for time bound. If we do not tie ourselves to times, deadlines, in all these various aspects, what will happen is we will have a lovely plan and it will be a plan. But the delivery, the birth of the plan really comes in terms of funding and in terms of timings. Understanding what time frame have we as a government, an administration, and a country, because it must be continuous. What have we set for ourselves as the deadline for each of the aspirations in this plan? So it's not just a lovely plan. Because I finish as I started, sir. This is a serious document. This is a big document. This is a long document. This is a complicated document, but it is a comprehensive document, sir. And if we work together, this plan could ensure that we have a better life for all. And that is what this administration is about. With that, sir, I am obliged. Thank you very much.
Honourable Member for St. Peter.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I rise first to acknowledge that we are within the 16 days of activism to root out gender-based violence, and orange is the color, and we ought always to remember that in all of our important discussions that there are some real issues that need to be addressed. The Honourable Member for Christchurch South spoke eloquently and very forcefully about the humanity that must underline everything that we do as a government and underline every policy that we enact in our role as managers stewards of what our people, those who have voted and those who have not voted, have placed really in our remit. And Mr. Speaker, this whole matter of gender-based violence and the need to address it represents an issue that is cross-cutting when we're talking about physical planning and physical development and a physical development plan. Because any physical development plan, much as the Honourable Member who I referred to earlier said, we have to take into consideration, and I note that the Honourable Member for the City spoke about lighting just now in very positive terms. And I have to say positive because I'm the Minister responsible for Social Security. And I wish to have more persons who are able to contribute to Social Security. But I'm also conscious that when we speak about lighting is one of those issues that if it is not done right, or if it is absent, can contribute to gender-based violence. I'm talking about accessibility, the ability to get to safety or to get to law enforcement easily. All of these are issues that must be taken into consideration when developing plans such as the very good one that we are debating here today. And so I don't want it to be lost on any of us that an issue like gender-based violence has particular interests in a physical development plan, a national plan that speaks to how this country will expand, grow, and create the facility that will allow for the enjoyment of this space by the people in this space. Now, Mr. Speaker, I think you would expect we'll be focusing quite narrowly. And there are some who believe that this place is not a place to be parochial. Just allow me to say to those people that I am here only because of parochial interests. In other words, nobody from St. John sent me here. And nobody from Christchurch West sent me here. Only those from St. Peter sent me. And they expect me in this debate to speak to their issues. As a matter of fact, I was supposed to have an important meeting this afternoon, and I could not attend to it because those who sent me here have given me some specific matters that they want me to highlight on their behalf. But I want to say, Mr. Speaker, I want to begin by speaking to the fact that the constituency I represent is an interesting one as it relates to the geography. And so St. Peter extends from what the physical development plan calls the coastal cliffs. So if you go to the Risk, if you go to Boscobel, if you go to Pico Tenerife, which is in the Boscobel area, you have those coastal cliffs in the east. And then it extends westward along some terraces, passing our highest point, Mount Stepney, in the mount. Well, the peak of Mount Stepney is actually in St. Andrew, but the slope close to the peak is in St. Peter, on the St. Peter side, which is our highest point. And we have those terraces that lead into our coastal area in Spikestown. Spikestown, Six Mains, well, not my constituency, but the parish, Roadview, right up to Mullins and up to Gibbs. So we have an interesting landscape from east to west, from west to east, across the parish. We have agriculture, we have commerce. In Spikestown, we have Rampus Rock. I mentioned Pico Tenerife in the east. some of our famous poets in St. Peter have actually published an anthology of poems from Rampus to Tenerife to speak to the range of geographical and geological features that define the parish and that also define the constituency. I want to begin, but not to begin, I want to speak in relation to the parish and the constituency really in three areas. And the first one is what I call what should become a national park village. Now, the Scotland District National Park, as defined by some, starts on the eastern coast of St. Lucie and Cove Bay, maybe a little bit past Cove Bay, through the Boscobel area, the Risk, and goes into what is the more familiar part of the Scotland District, St. Andrew, St. Joseph, and a part of St. John. Now, I refer to a national park village because in the area of the Risk and Boscobel, we have one of the most scenic views in all of Barbados. I had the pleasure to go there with my friend, former and current workmate, the Honourable Member for St. Michael, West Central, and to see the view all across St. Andrew. But I speak about the area that some call Monkey Jump, right in the Risk Boscobel area. And we can see from Little Bay to East Point from that area. And there are quite a number of residents in the area who see the potential for creating a product that will allow for enfranchisement on their part. They see potential in creating a product that will bring visitors to the area, that will allow for them to be able to develop economic activity while taking care of those visitors who come to the area. And so even as we plan, and we have our physical development plans and the various sub-plans, we have also to look at the future in maybe some areas that may not have been on the table at the time when the plan was put together. And we have to see and discern some little areas where there can be development that will be meaningful for the community around it, but that will not do violence or harm or damage to that community. And there are many examples across the Caribbean, and I've had some conversations with the Honourable Member for St. Michael West Central, the Honourable Minister responsible for tourism and international transport. And I'm actually working on a plan. I've shared just a rough draft with him already. But it means that the facilitation around that must come into play. Facilitation, Mr. Speaker, that includes legislative work, facilitation within the scope of what the Planning and Development Department is responsible for, facilitation that will allow for true enfranchisement. And I use the term true enfranchisement because if enfranchisement is to mean what most of us expect it to mean, it must be within the reach of those persons we call the micro-entrepreneurs or potential entrepreneurs. That is to say, a person who has added on a room to their house to be able to offer accommodation, short-term accommodation. The person who has built on a bar to allow for some kind of entertainment activity. There must be, and I'm not here today trying to give any specific recommendations, but to say generally that our legislation has to be able to accommodate Mr. Boyce in Boscobel, as well as accommodating somebody who is more of a small or medium-sized business in Spikestown. The legislative framework and the planning and development framework must accommodate those persons. If this document, this physical development plan, is to mean anything to persons living in rural Barbados who want to take advantage of opportunities that they can see around them, then we have to make sure that our legislation and all our frameworks take that into consideration. Now, I also believe, and I can't, the Honourable Member for St. Michael Southeast would not expect me to speak about developing the Boscobel risk area without also saying that the infrastructure in the area must also allow for that development. So we're talking about legislation, we're talking about how planning and development works, and we're talking about the infrastructure. And so issues like roads, issues like water also have to be addressed. Addressed first for the residents, but addressed also to allow residents to be able to earn, to become entrepreneurs, and to assist in the development of our country. That is vitally important, and these things must work together so that we can develop our people, and our people will not feel as though we have forgotten those in the rural areas, or those who have what they believe to be small ideas. We have to be able to facilitate them all. And then, Mr. Speaker, I want to speak about 6 Mains. I heard the Honourable Member for Christchurch South speak fulsomely to oysters. I want to posit that 6 Mains is an authentic fishing village. So I'm not attempting to run up against the Honourable Member. He spoke about oysters as a fishing town. 6 Mains is not a town. But 6 Mains in the Barbados context, I think, is an authentic and may, Mr. Speaker, be probably the only remaining authentic fishing village. That is to say, it remains centered around activity on the coast, centered around fishing. It remains authentic because it is that draw with locals and visitors when they are looking for an experience that is not overly commercialized, that has not been diluted by other things. And, you know, based on what the Honourable Member just said in relation to oysters, something that I did not even think about, but I will be opposed to any fast food establishment coming even close to 6 Mains. Because I have seen from his experience that their presence can dilute and disrupt a genuine experience, the genuine experience that many Barbadians and many visitors want can be diluted with the, let me say, importation of what is not really even anything good for Barbadians. But I leave the Minister of Health and those responsible for NCDs to talk about fast food and fast food restaurants. But 6 Mains is an area that also it finds mention in the plan, but not significant enough. And that may be because there are some issues that need to be addressed. And so, Mr. Speaker, the matter of land tenure in 6 Mains is one that must be addressed. The people of 6 Mains are tired of being referred to as squatters. They are tired of feeling as though they are forgotten. They are tired of seeing development happening all around them, but they are not even able to develop the plot on which their houses have stood for, in some cases, more than 60, 70 years. They cannot develop their spot, but they can see development going on around them. Now, I say this as the Member of Parliament for the constituency of St. Peter. I'm not placing the blame on anybody else, but I'm saying to us in this chamber, who constitute the government, that we have a responsibility to do all that we can. In other words, to do maybe a little bit more than is happening at the moment to make sure that those issues are addressed. We have a picturesque town, a town that has what could be considered the fundamentals of traditional Barbadian society. A small area with 2 places of worship, with 3, 4 bars or restaurants or shops. Well, no, actually there's a 5th one now close to the roundabout. With fishing boats, with a place where the smaller, the Moses can come in, and where there are fish vendors. The essence of early Barbadian coastal society. We have to preserve it. And we have to preserve it because the people who live there want it preserved. Primarily, we're not preserving it for visitors. We are preserving it, we have to preserve it, because the people who live there and whose parents lived there and whose grandparents lived there want it preserved. They want it to remain an authentic fishing village. But Mr. Speaker, it is a village that has to come into the 21st century. And so the issues of tenure have to be addressed. I've said in this honorable chamber before that we've already started discussions with Barbados Tourism and Investment, Inc. on the matter of the fishing, of the stalls for fish vending. I visited the area with the Honourable Member for St. Michael Northeast, and there also is a plan to have a small jetty in St. Mains. And that is because, Mr. Speaker, the Centre for Fishing in St. Peter is not really Spikestown. Spikestown has been a centre, but the centre for fishing and fishing activity in St. Peter is St. Mains. And so those boats, the day boats and the other boats, need to be able to haul up. They need to be able to pull up to discharge their cargo. They need to be able to get ice. They need to be able to get fuel. And so in all of this physical development, what is not mentioned is what needs to happen in 6 Mains. We need to have the infrastructure and the amenities that will allow the residents to be able to stay in their village and offer to the public, both the local public and visitors, a product, an authentic product that they can be proud of, that visitors can enjoy, and that will allow the residents to be able to enjoy a good standard of living in this country. And those are some of the needs, and I have to put those on the table because, again, if a 500-page physical development plan is to mean something to breathe in 6 Mains, then it has to address the issues of the people in 6 Mains. So we understand this plan to have many principles, but these principles now have to be translated into language and actions that mean or that represent something real. The words have to come off of the page, and it has to manifest itself in a real way, and in a way that benefits the people who live in this country. And I, Mr. Speaker, have been sent to this place to articulate those very things on behalf of the people. I spoke about the risk and Boscobel, Daytree Hill as well. I forgot to mention Daytree Hill earlier, in that area, and also Six Mains. I want to focus my attention, though, on Spitestown. And maybe I should begin by saying that I noticed throughout the Spitestown section references to something called the bypass road. Now, I know what that is, but I also do not know what that is. Because on February 28th, 2020, February 28th, 2020, the name was changed. The name was changed to the KNR Husbands Highway. And so a term like the bypass road really has no place in the document. And I thought that it had been removed and replaced because I'd spoken to it in another place before. But it has no place. But the second reason why I mentioned that, beside the accuracy of the description in terms of the name, is that a physical development plan does not stand in splendid isolation. A physical development plan is a plan that is part of a society. It speaks to physical development in a country with people, and in a country that has, from time to time, recognized its sons and daughters who have contributed significantly to the development of this country. And so even what may be considered small issues, there may be somebody hearing me at this time who may be wondering, well, why are you making fuss over the name of a road? Mr. Speaker, people are at the center of any development, must be at the center. So while it is called a physical development plan, it is within a context. And in St. Peter, we've attempted to recognize your predecessor, or a predecessor of yours, I should say, would have been referred to as the Honourable KNR Husbands, who was the first black human being to sit in this location, in this honorable chamber. And so I expect that while we focus on, while technical people may focus on technical things, we recognize that there's a context. But I want to say that what I see in the physical development plan with respect to Spitestown reflects this government's recognition and understanding that Spitestown is to be a center for heritage, cuisine, and the arts. That is clearly stated in our manifesto of 2018. Spitestown, a center of heritage, cuisine, and the arts. I am satisfied, Mr. Speaker, that the physical development plan embraces that perspective and has gone some distance in ensuring that the development of the town comes within the ambit of the goal that we've set in terms of what the focus of the town will be. And the town has many positive attributes. A transportation hub, Mr. Speaker, that is rivaled only by Bridgetown. From Spikestown, you can get to St. Lucie, you can get to St. Andrew, you can get to St. Joseph, you can get to St. Philip, you can get to Christ Church, to St. Michael, you can pass through St. Thomas, and you pass through St. James. So a hub that is a real hub. You can get to many places, and we have that. The access to the town is very good. We have the jetty in Spikestown. Again, work done by this party in different iterations. The first jetty, and then the refurbishment done some time ago. The Honourable Member for Christchurch West was actually there and presided at the reopening, the official reopening of the jetty. Now, I want to say something, interject with something here. There is a focus on Queen Street as the spine, the main artery. And that is fine, provided that the planners and those who craft this and those who will use this document moving forward do not forget that Spikestown is really an L shape in terms of the majority of its commercial activity. So much of the street actually is more like a T. But most of the activity is on Queen Street. But we must not forget Church Street. We must not forget Church Street. And those who play their business on Church Street always remind me that governments have focused on Queen Street to the detriment of Church Street. I've had reason to say that to the Honourable Member. I shared that with the Honourable Member for St. Michael Southeast some time ago. But we cannot forget Church Street. Church Street is an important commercial artery of Spikestown, and I thought I needed to say that. But Mr. Speaker, there is something that has bothered me for quite some time, and it is Barbados's proclivity to destruction. Many years ago, I haven't asked your permission, and I will not do like others and say that and then call names. But there was a person who then headed the Barbados National Trust who had to fight to stop some very silly people from knocking down Arlington House. And Mr. Speaker, I have no apologies for calling anybody who wants to knock down Arlington House silly, because it is one of the most stupid things that I'd ever heard. He and those he worked with had to fight to stop them from knocking down the only single house left in Barbados that gives that physical, structural connection to Charleston, a town and a colony that was colonized out of Barbados, out of Spikestown. There's also a gentleman, the nephew, I think, of C. Van Roland Edwards, who had to fight. You know, every year we celebrate independence, but there are people walking around in Barbados who will lick it down. I don't know if they just look at it and figure it needs to come down. But the house of C. Van Roland Edwards was also on the chopping block to come down. And it pains me that it seems very difficult to reach compromise with some of these people. Now, a structure could be structurally unsound. That is understood. It could pose a danger. But I do not understand why there would be a reluctance to sit down to see how it could be saved, how it could be strengthened, how it could be restored. But the first thing that comes to some people's mind is that it has to be destroyed. So Arlington House was saved, and the ground floor of Van Roland Edwards' house was saved. We have to mature in our approach to our physical infrastructure and our view about heritage. And if our views are not matured, if we don't get some sense into our heads, then we will have a really, really nice physical development plan, but there will be some rogues around who will be still walking about mashing up things that ought to be preserved. And so there has to be a real connection between a lovely document and the persons who are charged with various aspects of our development to ensure that the actions do not go counter to the physical development plan. When once the building is destroyed, then what? You know, a colleague of ours said you can't unbreak an egg. We have to be sure-footed, and all of the grand ideas in this physical development plan have to permeate right across the public and private sector. If this information, all 522 pages of it, so the Honourable Member for Christchurch West and his Director General and everybody else have a significant task, because they have to get stuff off of these leaves, these sheets of paper, into the heads of people who have the power, because some don't like to say that, have the power to lick up and mash up and destroy. We have to make sure that damage is not done. In Speightstown, there has to be some method of protecting the vernacular. I'm speaking now specifically to the old Noel Roach building. Mr. Speaker, the overhanging balcony has fallen off. A lot of the property in Speightstown, and I've been being very deliberate in this, what I'm going to say. A lot of the properties in Speightstown are owned by people who have deep pockets, and in some cases, a lot of influence. I'm saying in this honorable chamber, Mr. Speaker, that regardless of who it is, and regardless of their connections, the vernacular of Speightstown must be respected. And specifically in the case of the old Noel Roach building, the overhanging balcony has fallen off. I'm saying to the Honourable Member for Christchurch West and everybody else, but I'm saying it through you, Mr. Speaker. He may hear because he is here. But I'm saying to you, Mr. Speaker, there must be provision that when those balconies fall off, that in the reconstruction work, in the renovation work, that they be replaced in some way. We must maintain the vernacular of the town. Otherwise, the town will lose its character. And it will lose its character, and those who inhabit the town will lose their connection, their traditional connection with the town. Speightstown is to be a center of heritage, cuisine, and the arts. Speightstown is a town where people live, and while the definition, the area, I should say, under consideration in the physical development plan does not extend, for example, to we call it under the hill, Station Hill, or Farm Road, or Burma Road, or maybe Church Street, Gardens, Golden Mile, does not extend that far. It does include elements of Porter's Road. It includes Mango Lane. It includes Chapel Street. It includes Gordon's Alley. It includes Church Street. There's still a number of people living on Church Street, Lower Church Street. It also includes Major Walk, where people still live. And those persons who live there, along with those who live just around the boundary, must continue to be a part of whatever is done in Spikestown. We have taken the initiative in the town to, as we talk about development, this is now from the MP's perspective. We involve the people of the area in whatever is happening in the area. And I am saying to the Honourable Member for Christchurch West and everybody else, because it's not just his ministry that will be responsible, but there'll be other ministries. When we go into communities, we have to engage with the people in those communities. We have to make sure we take their perspectives into consideration. Because, like I said before, a physical development plan does not stand on its own. It is within the context of the people that it impacts. And the people that it impacts are the people who live in this space and the people who use the space. And so I expect that there will be continuing engagement where that is concerned. Now, there is also...
Honourable Member, you have 2 more minutes.
That's fine. The mangrove swamp, I can just speak to a couple of important issues. The mangrove swamp on Sand Street is one of the few remaining in this country. Mr. Speaker, I'm saying on the floor of this honorable chamber that the people of St. Peter expect that it will be preserved. The people of St. Peter and their Member of Parliament and mouthpiece expect that it will be preserved. I also want to say that with respect to vending, and one of the earlier speakers spoke to vending zones, we have passed a vending bill in this honorable chamber when we were in another place. I have submitted an area within the definition of Spikestown, within the definition in the physical development plan as a vending zone. That is to say, outside of the fence of the bus terminal and on the other side of the Kiernan Husbands Highway, immediately opposite. I am expecting that in the not too distant future, there will be some kind of activity. Volcanoes that have been dormant for 500 years are waking up. I expect activity on these vending zones. The matter, and I'll end on this matter, will actually end on 2. A critical access into Spikestown now that the traffic flow has changed is Chapel Street. Mr. Speaker, Chapel Street is one of the worst roads in St. Peter. It needs attention. We cannot have a town where the access road is as bad as Chapel Street. It needs attention. Now, the final thing I'm going to speak to in the final 30 seconds is to support the idea of the master plan. And I agree with those who have spoken before about it. It needs to include the residents. It needs to include considerations about safety and health, even as we speak to the cross-cutting issue of gender. It needs to speak to the tangible and the intangible heritage. So as we honor our famous citizens, a master plan needs to include all of those things. And for Spikestown, the blue and green economy, as outlined in this wonderful document, is a great inclusion, will be a great inclusion to a master plan that addresses Spikestown in particular. Mr. Speaker, I am in full support of this physical development plan. I think it is a wonderful document. I believe that once it is internalized, so it cannot sit only with the Honourable Member for Christchurch West. It has to be internalized by all of us, including myself. Once we internalize it, once the public service internalizes it, once the private sector internalizes it, I am confident that the Barbados that is developed out of this plan will be one that we will be proud of, but that it will be one that our children and our grandchildren, when they look back, they will say of us that we developed a really great framework that laid the groundwork for the orderly, systematic, and human-centered development of this country. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I'm obliged.
Honourable Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to move that this resolution further debate be postponed.
Question that this resolution be further debated and postponed. All those our members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Meeting the ayes have it.
Dollars, 25 million, and interest thereon to be borrowed by Kensington Oval Management Incorporated from African Export-Import Bank on the terms and conditions set out in the schedule to this resolution for the purpose of financing the rehabilitation and maintenance of sports infrastructures ahead of the 2024 Cricket World Cup.
Honourable Member for Christchurch East Central.
Thank you so very much, Mr. Speaker. This is an important resolution before the Chamber this afternoon, sir, for a whole host of reasons, especially given the debate in this Chamber today. And it is instructive, sir, that when we're talking about development, one cannot speak of development in the Caribbean context, sir, without the notion of cricket being intricately woven, sir, with respect to said development. And for those of us, sir, who used to listen on AM radio at first, sir, back in the day, to the West Indies delivering glory, sir, all over the world, it is instructive that whilst we have a very strong sentiment, sir, and affinity to cricket, that in modern times, in this 21st century, sir, the game has evolved. Its practice has evolved, sir, as you know, because when you and I were growing up, sir, we used to play in the road with anything that could form a bat, could form stump, sir, could even form a ball. But the game has evolved, as I said, sir. And this resolution before the chamber today is effectively, sir, to allow Barbados to be able to again, sir, set its sights for goal in the context of not just the cricketing framework, but I'm just going to briefly outline what the government's vision is with respect to the development and redevelopment of Kensington Oval, but in the wider context in terms of Bridgetown, that immediate environment, so just to set the context in terms of what we see as the future in relation to not just the retrofitting and the refurbishment of the existing facility, but to broaden and give opportunities, sir, for new investment, for mobilizing on the talents of our legends, perhaps, sir, and to broaden their reach in relation to the impact that cricket has had on us in the region. But going into next year, sir, and being one of the critical events globally, we could never see a situation, sir, where cricket was being played in the West Indies, and especially a Cricket World Cup, sir, being played in the West Indies, and Barbados in not being a part of the hosting of these matches. But beyond that, sir, seeing this as an opportunity for the rebirth of Kensington, how we manage facilities, sir, moving forward, and as I say, sir, the greater context in relation to how we see the further development and investment in the development of cricket for players, coaches, administrators, and the like, sir, and understanding that the cricket that I knew, sir, when I was growing up is not the cricket of today. And therefore, the business of cricket, sir, is really what I really want to speak to this afternoon, because I've had to let my colleagues be aware that once I've separated myself from the passions that was strong in me in my youth, sir, when it came to cricket, there's still a very clear business case for why the Caribbean. There's still a very clear cultural case to be made, sir, with respect to cricket. But I believe that unless we get the business of cricket right, sir, that we will not be able to see its fullest potential, sir, as we know that it can deliver. Now, sir, the resolution speaks to the government being able to give a guarantee to the Kensington Oval Management Incorporated, COMI, sir, in relation to how we would finance the rehabilitation and maintenance of sport infrastructure ahead of the 2024 ICC Cricket World Cup, which is being held between June 4th and June 30th in Barbados, 2024, sir, in Barbados. And you would recall, sir, when the first redevelopment was done, not too long ago, sir, it was between 2004 and 6, really, not so long ago, when the then Kensington Oval went through a redevelopment cycle, sir, and it is instructive that some not less than 20 years later, we are coming back, sir, to be able to ensure that we can put the facility in a tip-top shape to deliver on a series of games that we believe would allow us to fully benefit from not just the tourism, but really, sir, the atmosphere that has evolved from what was then, sir, in 2007, the 50 over one-day tournament as we knew it then, to evolve now to, sir, to the T20. And I know that the World Cup having just concluded in India, sir, in relation to the one-day, I know that we are all looking forward to better returns on our own part individually here in the West Indies. So we are signaling to all those who will form part of the West Indies team that the investment that the people of this region and certainly the people of Barbados will make in relation not just to the physical plant, but the investment of our time and our passion, sir, that we will expect to see returns on that investment, sir, that is commensurate with the sacrifice that we will all make. But it is important that we appreciate that in order to be able to put us in a position where the warm-up facilities, the actual playing of the games at Kingston Oval, sir, that we are in a position to host people and to be able to ensure that we can get the best outcome out of these series of games. Now, sir, Kingston, as I said, sir, is effectively, sir, if you were to, well, Kingston is Kingston, sir, so I'm not going to belabor the point. But in the Western Hemisphere, sir, Kingston, sir, is like Lords. Kingston, sir, is like Sharjah. And therefore, we must see that as part of our development, sir. We must see it as part of how we can provide opportunities for persons to be able to earn a living, sir. And we must leverage the history, not just of Kingston, but the history of the great cricketers who have contributed to inspiring a generation of West Indians, sir, but certainly a series of generations of Barbadians to be excellent, sir, to be world beaters, to be world class. And as you know, sir, the Prime Minister has set to 2030 as the goal that Barbados will become world class. And therefore, this must be seen as a signature step, sir, in being able to align our strong cricketing history to demonstrate to the rest of the world that a small country like Barbados, being able to produce, sir, when you think about it, sir, per capita, perhaps the highest number of world-class cricketers for such a small nation, sir, that we now must inspire our young people to achieve similar excellence, sir, and to be able to put the right programs in place to support the development of cricket, but not just the development from a playing perspective, but the opportunities that a world-class facility backed by world-class coaching and programming, sir, right from the community level up, will allow us to be able to see the fullest utilization of the facility beyond international tours, sir, beyond international events such as the ICC World Cup, sir, to be able to ensure that the facility is in a position to be able to pay for itself, to be able to maintain itself, sir, and that is where the government of Barbados now sees as a new prospect with respect to, given where the global game has gone, that we will be in a position, sir, to establish for the first time, sir, to give naming rights, specifically as it relates to the facility, sir, and to utilize the revenues from said naming rights, sir, to be able to ensure that we are in a position to maintain the facility at the highest standard for a global game, sir, with global reach, to ensure that we can have the financing in place to be able to achieve not just support for the local programming in cricket, but as part of the wider consideration, if you like, sir, of the redevelopment of that area, given the prospect of being able to leverage the legends with respect to the development of a hotel within close proximity. And as you know, sir, we are currently reviewing where we would potentially move what was formerly known, sir, as central purchasing, and to have the redevelopment of that space very close to Kingston, sir, to be able to develop and to leverage what is, in effect, sir, the legends of cricket in Barbados, to be able to provide a world-class experience through a hotel and experience center, to be able to develop and to accommodate what we are doing with the ground itself. Now, sir, this can't happen in the next 6 months, but that is what we're contemplating in relation to the redevelopment with respect to that, some of the spaces. And that too, sir, and as I wish to, as the honourable member for the city had indicated in the previous debate, that will be commensurate as well, sir, with the urban regeneration project which is being contemplated with respect to the upgrade of the Bridgetown sewage plant, which is just a stone's throw away from the oval itself, sir. And to have from the environs of Westbury Road, sir, going through the Earlings, coming up through Lakes Folly, sir, in that area, as the Prime Minister indicated, as part of the funding that we are pursuing from the Saudi Development Fund for the development, sorry, that we can see persons who live, not as literally, sir, a stone's throw away from Kensington Oval, benefit as well, sir, from the prospect of urban regeneration, such that the improvement in housing quality, sir, and the like, sir, that these are some of the things that we will see as part of the investment in the revitalization of Bridgetown in order to address issues in relation to climate resilient housing. And, sir, as you know, to be able to ensure then that the persons who have lived, if you like, sir, right next to the sewage plant, having access to the systems that others in the other parts of the country do. And that is what we intend to build up, sir, over the course of the next few years. And that is why we are taking these extraordinary steps to ensure that the entire process, sir, is as cohesive, integrated, sir, and coherent, so that ordinary citizens don't just see us taking money and putting in a facility, but that the environs around these areas for sporting opportunities, sir, and for engagement at a substantive level is something that this Barbados Labour Party, sir, is committed to doing, so that people see and understand that these are the things that we are doing in their interest, sir, to create opportunities, to, in effect, sir, determine who will be the next, if possible, sir, the next Sir Gary, the next Sir Frank World, sir, the next Sir Everton Weeks, the next Clyde Walcott, sir, the greats of Barbadian cricket, sir, and West Indies cricket, and world cricket, sir, the next Wes Hall, sir, the next Malcolm Marshall, and therefore the development and the programming that will go along with this, in this initial investment, sir, over the next few years. We want to see many more Barbadians not just playing cricket in Barbados, but certainly playing cricket wherever cricket is to be played globally, but within the context of how we now manage the facility called Kensington Oval, sir, such that Kensington Oval now becomes, sir, within the context of this hemisphere, the place where, whether cricket is being played in South America or North America, sir, that Kensington Oval now must be the place, sir, that people come to, not just for cricket, but certainly within the context of being able to engage, as I said, sir, with respect to investment opportunities in the exploring the benefits that can come from the Legends of Barbados franchise, sir, community-based facilities. And as you know, sir, we have great interest in ensuring that the Sir Garfield Sobels International Cricket Challenge, sir, becomes, it has been, but since COVID, sir, we have to re-establish that very, very strong international participation that will bring opportunities for our people, sir, not just to participate in the playing of cricket, but certainly in the administration, sir, the matters relating to scoring and those other administrative matters, sir, are critically important opportunities to allow people to earn a living out of cricket, sir, such that whether we all have dreams, sir, of scoring test hundreds at Kensington. And to the extent that that is indeed possible, sir, we now have to make new types of investment. I know that the Ministry of Youth, when the Honourable Member for St. George South was the Minister, had started a project with a university to look at the biomechanics and the science of how our athletes, sir, are performing. And therefore it is to that extent that I'm taking this opportunity this evening to locate the 50 million Barbados dollars, 25 million US that we're borrowing here, sir, for the upgrade, to locate it in the context that we are doing this not because we would just want to spend money to upgrade a stadium, and most of it, sir, is in the lighting. And it is expensive lighting, but it is lighting that is required to allow the people to see properly. You would recall, sir, that at the last World Cup, with the final, everybody remembers how dreary and dull the place looked at the end. That will not be the case this time. But we want to make sure that the vision, sir, the vision that we are showing to the country as to what is possible if we do things differently, sir. In the same way that we are trying to achieve transformation in a range of areas, sir, we have to look within ourselves, within our sporting administrations, of which cricket is a critical administration, sir, and do things differently such that we can ensure that these types of investments that we want to attract, whether it is mobilizing domestic resources or indeed, sir, foreign investment, that it gives us the opportunity, sir, to be able to build out a credible 21st century cricketing program, which I do believe, sir, can serve as a catalyst for how other sporting organizations across the country can use as a model, sir, for how we can give credible international opportunities for more Barbadians to pursue. But at the end of it, sir, it requires discipline, as you know, because to hone your craft, sir, and I know I've listened to interviews from Sagari and the others, and they will all tell you, sir, that it takes discipline, it takes practice to be able to get good in the first instance, but more critically, sir, to become great, you must do it with excellence. And therefore, you cannot take for granted the time that is required to prepare. And therefore, the cricketing programs that are contemplated with respect to accompany this investment is going to be a critical part of how we see the development, sir, of that specific space moving forward to allow us to be able to put cricket back on the map, so to speak, as it relates to the region. I know we all have love-hate relationships with the West Indies from time to time, sir, but we must look past that love-hate relationship and see the opportunity beyond what the West Indies men may do from time to time. The women seem to be faring much better, sir, but we are not going to get into the gender discussion. But the reality is that we have to give the broadest possible support, sir, if we are going to continue the legacy of success that we know that the Sagari and the others built literally with no similar type of investment at the time. So just a few specifics, sir, on the loan agreement. The term, sir, is 7 years, and we have a 2-year moratorium, which means, sir, that there will be no repayment of principal, sir, in the first 2 years of the loan. The interest, sir, is 7. The interest is 7%, sir, and that's payable on June 30th and December 31st of each year in relation to the interest payments. Now, sir, the reality of it is this, and this is being done, sir, and I neglect to say, sir, this is being done in collaboration with the Afri-Exim Bank, sir, which, as you know, the government has taken an extraordinary amount of time and effort to be able to build links with the African continent. And through the African Export-Import Bank, we've been able to put this particular facility in place for COMI to be able to do this work. And it is also, as well, sir, and it is fortuitous because it is also part of how we see the development of new air links with Africa as well as the Middle East, sir, in the context of being able to strategically bring a different type of market in relation to tourism to Barbados. And therefore it is through, again, the African Exim Bank that we're having negotiations with the airlines from Africa as well as out of the Middle East, sir, to be able to bring more business to Barbados. So this is not just a random, sir, intervention that might appear to some people. There's actually a method, sir, to the madness, as people would say, in relation to what we've done. And therefore, when we open the missions in Ghana and Kenya, as well as in the UAE, sir, with respect to being very deliberate about government's foreign policy and government's commercial diplomacy that is being exercised through the mission, sir, and the outreach that the government has taken strategically to locate the African Exim Bank headquarters outside of Africa, the first one in an office in Barbados, sir. There is a consistency with respect to policy and its execution, sir, that we know that once we give the effort, sir, enough time and attention to be able to ensure that it works, then we are confident that the prospects, not just for the development of cricket, but the other opportunities for investment, sir, is going to come along the way. And the truth is, sir, as we have built out through the BERT program, and we look at how we are going to grow the economy, sir, and the like, then of course it means the hosting of the World Cup, which in of itself will bring some significant tourists and tourism activity in June of next year. And as you know, sir, June is usually one of the lightest months for tourism in Barbados. But I know that the minister, my neighbor, the member for St. Michael West Central, is working also to, as I said, expand the routes out of Africa and the Middle East, but equally, sir, from South America, to close that seasonality gap that exists with the traditional northern winter months. And so during June of next year, the tourism and the activity around that obviously is going to add additional impetus to our tourism players, to the economy, sir, at a very critical time that we need it to keep the momentum that has been building from the time we reopened from COVID, sir. All through now, the numbers are steadily increasing, sir. We anticipate a good winter season, and therefore, to the extent that we are hosting the World Cup in June, sir, it is critical for a whole set of reasons. So it's not just the investment in the Kensington Oval here that is being asked of Parliament today, but the taxi operators, sir, the vendors, the number of jobs that will be sustained, sir, as a result of hosting the World Cup in Barbados, sir. I think it's going to be a tremendous opportunity for all of us to be able to manage, sir, and therefore it is something that we feel very proud to be able to deliver for the country. And therefore, to the extent that these monies are required, sir, for the upgrade of the Kensington facility, I know a lot of work has already started, and we are just here, sir, to make sure that everything is in order for that process to continue. So the reality of it is, sir, that we really do have some additional works to do in relation to ensuring that we can recover this investment. And we will recover this investment, sir, because as I said earlier, well, it's the naming right, sir, the development of global cricket legends infrastructure outside of Kensington, development of international school, arising out of the Sagarafi Sobers International Schools Cricket Challenge, sir, encouraging sports team accommodation, business hotel, and fine dining, world-class shopping to the nearby beach, sir, is part of how we see the redevelopment of that area in relation to being able to drive it. And commensurate, sir, with looking at selling the naming rights for Kensington will be potentially, sir, included in that maintenance contract to ensure that the facility remains in tip-top shape, so that at any point in the future, sir, that the country is in a position to host a World Cup, that we shall be in a position to do so. And to the extent that we have other opportunities, we'll be working obviously with the relevant stakeholders, the cricketing fraternity, so that they understand, sir, that this is business. This is not, as I said, sir, we've got to separate some of the emotion that we have in the past. This is business and how we're going to redevelop and bring opportunity in the broadest possible sense, sir, to the cricketing fraternity. And I think there's an opportunity for all of us, sir, government, as we have and continue to support cricket as the premier sport in Barbados, sir. It is now time that we look with more purpose on how do we develop players, develop opportunities, but whilst at the same time, sir, ensuring that the business of cricket is sustainable, such that it does not require the government to come back and to put monies in the way that we are doing in this way by guaranteeing this loan in this respect. And therefore, it is important that in charting this path forward, that everybody's on the same page, sir, in relation to what is required to make Kensington, sir, to move it from what we know it as boys and girls growing up, sir, and coming down Pickwick Gap, sir, on the morning of a test match, and the place bursts, and vendors, and all of that. And sir, I reminisce, and I love it. But regrettably, a lot of our youngsters don't have that same type of experience today. And we need that kind of buzz, sir, return to the area. Because the number of vendors, sir, as you know, down through Pickwick Gap, sir, all through the Earlines and the back there, sir, everybody participated whenever there was cricket at Kensington. There was an atmosphere, sir, there was an atmosphere in the ground and outside of the ground, sir, and people in the community felt it, they lived it, sir, and therefore, as part of what I described, sir, in terms of that entire urban regeneration exercise for that area, if we can achieve that social cohesion, sir, in relation to delivering not just the physical upgrade, but the communities being brought along with that investment in infrastructure, sir, then I know that this party and this government would have done a very good thing for the people of that area, and therefore it is upon us, sir, to make sure that all of the stakeholders are on board with the mission and the objective, sir, in order to ignite, sir, reignite a fire that I know is still burning for some of us, sir, still burning. But if we can reignite that fire, sir, such that any Barbadian who sets foot on Kensington, sir, to bat will intend to bat for either 20 overs, 50 overs, sir, or 5 days, because we understand, sir, the value of a batting hand. And I believe, sir, that if we can inspire our young people to appreciate that when it gets to your turn, sir, that you must give of your best. Just like Sir Gary, like Sir Frank, Sir Everton, Sir Clyde, and the others, sir, you give of your best. Then investments like these, sir, will prove to be invaluable, sir, for the Bajan psyche. It will be invaluable, obviously, for the opportunities that they will bring to give opportunities for people. But, sir, I believe it will be invaluable for the identity of the average Barbadian, because, sir, cricket and development means the same thing, sir, for us Bajans. And so, sir, with those few words, I beg to move that this resolution do not pass.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I will attempt, in the brevity of my intervention, to average back to the time that I really should have been able to cover between the two presentations today. So, fear not.
I might to understand, Honourable Member, given that you are a development economist, that you're saying that if you had 50 minutes or 60 minutes earlier, just a supposition, if you had 60 minutes before and you would take then 10 minutes, so you can 60 plus 10 is 70 divided by 2 is 35. So we give you you're giving yourself 5 minutes or something?
Mr. Speaker, as
Just
the
ask.
honorable member before me said, it is good to have aspirations, so I will aspire to do what you have outlined, but that's what I'm aiming for. I don't intend to be long, sir, because the points that I want to make, I think, can be made with brevity, and I hope to be very precise in what I am aiming for. So, where I want to begin, sir, and I thank you for giving me permission to mention somebody who I think has been very important to the way in which Comey has been able to perform over the last 5 years and its prospects for the future. And I have to make reference to the current chairperson, Mr. Damian Gaskin, who has really stepped up, stepped in, has occupied a space as chairman that really has gone above and beyond what we would normally expect from this kind of role. I have to salute him and the team that he has worked with at Comey with very limited resources. And so the reason that I mention that is that I know that his team, he himself and his team, have really been making very strong arguments for increased investment in that facility. Increased investment in Comey is necessary. You know, the honorable member for Christchurch East Central talked about creating something to which young people aspire, and being able to make sure that historic ground remains historic, and that it stands as a beacon of excellence for all of the cricketing greats who have passed and all of those who are to come. I don't want us to give up. I have been imploring the honorable member not to give up on West Indies cricket. I do not know if he was able to see the last century by Shea Hope, which was his 16th one-day international century. I continue to follow very closely what our young West Indies team is doing. And I believe that they need the support of governments in the region, and they need the support, they need us to bet on them. Not just in terms of upgrading grounds, but also many players like Shea, like Kyle, like Jason Holder were able to benefit from the High Performance Center that was based here in Barbados. I believe that not just upgrading infrastructure, but continuing to invest in how we raise cricketers is critical, and that these investments have to go beyond lights and beyond the physical infrastructure and help us to address those things. I don't know how many people, sir, I know you were one, who's able to watch, notwithstanding that West Indies was not involved, the last Cricket World Cup. And just looking at the way that we were able to enjoy the game. I mean, seeing that camera, that mobile camera, unmanned robotic camera on the boundary, catching every boundary, catching every ball. I mean, sir, if I sound excited, it's because it was exciting. And that kind of technology is also something to which we have to aspire, the development of cricket technology, whether it's the scoring, the scoreboards, how we cover the game, how we grow the market. So it's not just the players. It is cricket commentary, and we have some emerging and quite well established now Barbadian commentators that are doing amazing things globally. Whether it is cricket governance and being able to explore and expand the industry in that way, and also through cricket technology. But going back to the Cricket World Cup, the other thing that we have to realize that we are up against is that we're up against an internationalized approach to the game. And if we look, for example, at the way that India, as a cricketing nation, recruits and grows the game. I mean, first of all, the administrators are going into villages and going into communities and finding talent early. In order for them to find that talent early, that community talent has to be supported at the community level. And so I'm going to come to that in my 5 minutes. But I do want to say that we have to realize what we are up against. And we have to be able to grow and craft a cricket sector and a cricket market that realizes that, I mean, India is a vast population, and cricket is something they continue to hold sacred. If you couple that with the fact that they are out every day supporting and finding little boys and girls who are able to, at the level of the community, and finding them there and growing them and supporting them at that level, we will realize that we have to shift tremendously what we are doing with cricket and with the development of our grounds in this region. But I want to support something else that the Honourable Member said in his intervention, which is, how do we grow the industry here in Barbados? Now, about 6 years ago, when I made reference to a cricket hotel in the area, there were those who thought that it was a preposterous idea. But I'm glad to see that is something of which we have not let go. And I go back to India, and I want to assure you, sir, that it has nothing to do with the origins of my new family members. But I go back to because I think we need to look at the nations that are doing it well and understand how they have gotten where West Indies used to be. Now, the other day, sir, I found myself, for some reason, in an online disagreement with a stranger about a particular player. It was a post that was made, and you know how you get sometimes in this back and forth with people on social media. All in good fun. And I realized that the majority of the comments that were being made in that thread were from Indian people, right? People who are following the game worldwide, just because of the sheer numbers of the population and who have an unbreakable affinity with the sport, happen to come from India. If we targeted that market alone to be able to drive visitors who are driven here by watching cricket, by experiencing Komi, by experiencing the life and how the legends lived and where they lived in the region, we would already have a tremendous market to be able to grow that sector. I mean, we will continue to have England and the Barmy Army, we will continue to have all kinds of people. We need to target the highest population of cricket fans, and today that is India. We need to come up with a strategy, and that is going to include all kinds of other cultural shifts that we need to make. We need to be able to understand how these people that we will be inviting, how they move, how they eat, how they pray, and we will need to be able to carve what we do around that. But sir, I want to say quickly that one of the reasons that India, even though regrettably they did not succumb to Australia in the last going down, much to my heartbreak. But again, one of the reasons that they've been able to grow the sport so much is the investment at the level of the community. Now, sir, I support this investment in Komi. I have to, I believe in it, and I believe in what cricket can become again for the West Indies. And I do believe that the terms will begin to improve as the African Export-Import Bank spreads its wings in the region. That is a natural way that financial institutions begin and evolve. And so these things, I think, are manageable by the government. I very much appreciated the information that we received about the fact that I believe the increase in the debt amounts to, as a guarantee to the government of Barbados, by the government of Barbados, amounts to less than 0.3%. So these terms I find are manageable. What I struggle with is the extent to which we are making this large investment in cricket infrastructure, but we are not making sufficient small investments in sporting and community infrastructure at the community level in this country. Sir, I was very pleased to be able to partner with volunteers in the private sector recently to refurbish the Gully Hill Pavilion. And we had extensive discussions with the Sports Council about what they could contribute to that, and what resources they had to allow them to contribute to that, and finally realizing that the resources that they had at their disposal would not meet the requirements of the community in that moment, and continue not to meet the requirements of the community in every moment. And so we had to step up and say, look, we need to have somewhere for our young people to be, and we need to have somewhere for sports and the arts to develop in Carrington Village and in Valerie, and so we're gonna go ahead and do this. But it seems to me that we seem to be able to move so much more nimbly and quickly with these big ticket plans at the national level. And a simple plan for scheduled maintenance and upgrade of facilities, cutting of pastures and erection and fixing of lights and maintenance of pavilions. These basic bread and butter issues that make such a difference to people every day that we seem not to be able to execute to the satisfaction, not just of the community, but in many cases, perhaps not even to the satisfaction of the very institutions that are meant to be tasked with it. How are we resourcing the maintenance of community centers and community grounds? How? How much? With what regularity? What is the level of supervision? What is the plan? We talked earlier about having master plans and having, being able to have schedules. I've heard the Honourable Member for Christchurch West talk about having a building maintenance plan at the level of across all government buildings. And yet, we don't seem to realize that the Shea Hopes and the Jason Holders and the Alec Athenays and all of these young people who are doing so well now in their various countries, they come from a community. They had to have somewhere to run boat. And so, while I very much support the investments that are necessary for Comey, I think it is going to see, the upcoming series is going to see a lot of economic activity. But if you see my face looking pain, sir, it's because I do not understand, with all sincerity, how we are not resourcing the day-to-day maintenance of our community centers and the programs that have to take place therein. And so I'm simply asking, and I have every confidence that the member for St. John will speak to this and will be able to give some clarity and some confidence, but I believe that this is something, it is all well and good to have a brilliant Comey, a brilliant cricket ground, that when people pass, they can see and people can go and experience. But young people wake up every morning and look outside their window. Comey is not the first thing they see. They get a message from us about how much we believe in them based on how we maintain the spaces that they occupy. The other day at the same Gully Hill, there's a gentleman that brings his daughter every evening and their little puppy to play in the play park. She went attempting to climb, and this was not the maintenance problem of the National Sports Council, but of another institution. And she went attempting to climb up on the slide, and the grass was taller than her. And these may sound like small things, but we're doing big things. So how we reach the big things and we know the small things? Sir, I support this resolution. And I trust that just as we have seen the importance of maintaining our historic grounds, that we likewise understand the importance of maintaining our community grounds and showing our young people that we are betting on them and that we believe in them. Mr. Speaker, I'm obliged to you.
Honourable Member for St. John.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, let me start by addressing some of the concerns raised by the Honourable Member for St. Michael, South Central. You know, Mr. Speaker, I inherited a ministry that was hit by a pandemic. Not the one that we are familiar with, but a pandemic called DLP-10. Because the reality is that sports in this island was social distancing, with the exception of a community football competition and the Silver Hill Road Tennis Tournament, the annual Silver Hill. So for 10 years, the ministry was hit by a pandemic called DLP-10. But to speak to the issues that were raised by the Honourable Member for St. Michael's South Central, we are actively correcting a number of the issues that you raised in relation to maintenance on the plant as it relates to the playing fields and the pavilions. I have asked the National Sports Council to mimic what is happening at community development in relation to the center management committees. So I fully expect by the middle of next year or so that all of our pavilions will now have a center management committee in place that will treat to the maintenance not only of the playing field, but the opening of those pavilions so that communities can have access to all of these facilities after hours. Mr. Speaker, I fully support the resolution that will see the upgrades come to Kensington, that we call the Mecca. I believe that cricket is almost like a religion on island, hence that place of prominence in the national sports policy is one of the sports that we have treated to in a special way. But government, through my ministry, are doing a number of things for cricket on island, Mr. Speaker, and I will share some of the things that are happening. Now, one of the activities that are happening across the country is the construction of 14 mini stadia across every single parish on island. And I would invite my colleagues and the country as a whole to go to Friendship to see what is happening in terms of what these mini stadia will look like on completion. Mr. Speaker, in short time, the ministry will be launching some practice pitches at the old National Sports Council complex at Bleming. I think there are about 4 practice pitches that are primarily being put in place for youth cricket. Now, this is not to say that existing clubs and teams would not be able to use the facility to practice, but it is primarily to generate interest within the youth population in terms of cricket. And we are expecting that sometime in the not too distant future that a bowling machine will also be at that particular location to assist those youngsters who are looking to get involved in cricket. Mr. Speaker, youth captain training. I have an officer, and if you permit me, Mr. Jamal Smith, is responsible for doing a training program that will see a number of young cricketers go through a process of training as it relates to being captains of cricket teams. And we believe that this is necessary in order to promote the cricket, to ensure that we have a crop of youngsters who are fit for purpose in terms of when they get an opportunity to captain their school team or to captain community teams, and maybe to graduate to a level where they even reach captaining the West Indies cricket team. Mr. Speaker, the Community Coaches Program is one activity from the ministry that was birthed with a single purpose: to make sure that sports at the grassroots level is taken care of. And this is a coaching program that is being done by those persons who are involved in the process gratis. We're not paying them. These are youngsters who, like me, who at some point in time live in the community, decided to give back to a sport, decided to coach a particular discipline, and we are looking, Mr. Speaker, to ensure that we have all of our playing fields active on weekends with either football or cricket through the community coaches program. Mr. Speaker, for years now, and it's only the COVID-19 that would have stalled the Herman Griffith Cricket Tournament that is sponsored and run through the National Sports Council. These, Mr. Speaker, are initiatives that we believe will be able to grow cricket and to ensure that we have persons coming through the ranks from the grassroots level, as I mentioned, right up to represent country, and maybe, just maybe, it is a case where they can get into the West Indies team. Mr. Speaker, on Friday this week, the Barbados Royals cricket team will be launching the Barbados Royals Girls Cricket Club in Barbados, the first of its kind within the region. And this is an opportunity to ensure that our females are not left behind as it relates to cricket. We can develop some more Haley Matthews, some more Dottins, that we can then export our cricketers across the world to ply their trade, because it is now a case, Mr. Speaker, where it is an opportunity for them to make money. I remember, and I said this before at a couple of meetings, I remember at a political meeting in St. John, former Prime Minister Honourable indicating that when he was walking home from university, that he didn't mind walking from Cave Hill to Speightstown because he was walking out of poverty. And Mr. Speaker, I believe as Minister of Sport that in the same way he used the academics to do that, that our young people, there's a real opportunity for our young people to be able to make it out of poverty by taking sports at a serious level. And if it is the case, Mr. Speaker, that we can get buy-in from parents and we can get buy-in from the schools to allow our young people to be involved in sports, then I am sure that it is a way that we can see community development, the movement of self, the movement of family, the movement of community. And hence the reason why we are looking to monetize cricket, to ensure that at the end of the day, with all of the skill sets that we have, all of those persons on island who have made their name at the international level, that we should be able to use some of those individuals to monetize cricket and to make sure that some of our communities and some of our young people are involved in the process. Mr. Speaker, my ministry is in the process of rolling out another community competition. We're looking primarily to see if we can get those guys who are on the blocks to be involved in a cricket tournament. And it is expected that at some point in time, maybe some of these young captains that we are working with will be able to come back and to work or to hone their skills by captaining some of these teams. It is a work in progress, Mr. Speaker, but it will come to fruition for sure in 2024, if not before. This money, Mr. Speaker, that is going to Comey, it was mentioned before that the lights will form a major part of refurbishment at the particular location. But it is expected that with the World Cup coming here, that we will have five group stage matches and 2 Super 8 matches, Mr. Speaker. But there's more repairs to be done on the plant than just the lights. And anybody who do a visit to Kensington Oval will realize that there's some work to be done in the stands. So for example, the Greenwich and Hale stand and Haynes stand is scheduled to be repaired as well. Some remedial work. The Hewitt and Ennis stand, the Hall and Griffith stand, the Garfield Sobers Pavilion, and the screen is expected to be replaced. Mr. Speaker, I am not going to be long because the Honourable Member for Christchurch East Central would have indicated a lot in relation to the spend of this money. But just to say that if you're inviting, this is December, Mr. Speaker, and I know that growing up, there was a point in time when we did a lot to spruce up the place because it was that time of year. And you expect at some point in time that if family members or so visit your house, that you would have it in ship shape. And we are expected, Mr. Speaker, to invite the world to our home. It is only right that we put measures in place to ensure that Kensington is in ship shape when World Cup reach here next year. Mr. Speaker, I believe that the money is well spent. Like I said, it is not in the last 2 years that Kensington was in a state where remedial action was required, but we were hit by that pandemic. Now we are doing the cleanup. We have people outside again. Sports is alive and well in the country, and we will see that going forward, cricket will move to new heights as a result of this government investing not only in Comey, but at community level and in our young people to ensure that we have pride in place as it relates to cricket in the region and cricket at the international level. Mr. Speaker, before I take my seat, I'm not sure again when I will be up before December, so I want to wish December 25th. I want to wish the constituents of St. John an absolutely prosperous Christmas and a fantastic New Year, in the same way that we will have it as it relates to Cricket World Cup. I thank you.
Honourable St. George South.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Was a bit reluctant to rise, but it would be remiss of me if I did not support this resolution of US $25 million being invested in Kensington Oval Management, Inc. To support probably a sport I played from a little boy in the road in Ellerton, St. George. And to support, I recall my first cricket competitive game was played Ellerton Primary versus St. George Primary. And I took 5 for 12 on that day, 5 wickets for 12 runs on that day. I recall clearly.
Honourable member who you were playing against?
Mr. Speaker.
Just asking a question, Honourable member.
Mr. Speaker, that is one of the days that members in this age group recall. And that is one of the games, Mr. Speaker, that I can say that give me the fame in that wonderful parish of St. George from a little boy at primary school. But I went on, Mr. Speaker, not only then, from then I went on to that great institution in St. John. And I had the honor of leading an intermediate team for 2 years with the likes of some West Indian greats, Floyd Reefer, well, not greats, but players, Horace Waldron. But I recall being a young boy in Ellerton, and during the summer, we had a vibrant under 15 cricket tournament, under 19 cricket tournament. And then thereafter, I recall playing in an under 23. This is all in Ellerton. Malvern cricket, under 23 cricket team in the village playing against a select Barbados 11. And why I go there, Mr. Speaker, the whole aspect of cricket and how we see cricket, cricket is no longer an honor system. And I recall in the year 2001, when I returned from the motherland where I pursued a master's degree. And I recall a program, I think it was Mr. Holder, Keith Holder, was on a calling program where we had double wicket competitions going on. And I think it was Carol Hooper who teamed up with, I think it was Chris Gale. And there was a challenge for him or Chris Gale. Persons were arguing whether they should be allowed to play for the West Indies after we were playing in the double wicket competition. But Mr. Speaker, while we may spend $25 million in Comey to fix the light, and of course we have a first-class world cricket facility at Kensington, and it must not leave out the University of the West Indies, who have done their very share of developing young cricketers in this country, along with academia. But I won't get into the whole which is better, BCA versus university, because that is some of the issues that continue to divide our cricket. But we also go back then, Mr. Speaker, and we recognize that when Barbados cricket is strong, West Indies cricket is strong, or even stronger. And I'm spending my time here because, while we can't dwell on the past, we have to create the environment as a government, and we have done that. We are now investing $25 million. Just before my good friend from St. John picked up that ministry, we went to a bid for all the T20 games here. That was that bid, where we had all of them, and then you became the minister, member for St. John. But Mr. Speaker, we are spiraling in West Indies cricket. We can spend the money at Comey on the lights. BCL cricket is dying. And when I occupied that seat, member for St. John, one of the things that we looked at was not to bring BCL cricket back to the standard of BCA cricket, because we recognize that persons were transitioning from BCL to BCA. But I strongly believe that there's still a place for BCL cricket in this community, in this country. We are not playing as much cricket as we should as a country. The young boys, the girls are now, and I will speak to female cricket briefly, but we need to play more cricket in our schools. I recall playing in the Sagarfi Sobers on the 19 tournament. Where's that tournament? And this is not government that we're talking about, you know. The cricketing body in this country needs to get its act together. We can pump all the money out to Comey to have the wonderful facilities, but we need to focus on really developing our cricket. And I support the comments from the member for St. John and also the member for Christchurch East Central. I will speak to the comments from the member for St. John. Community cricket has to be revamped in a major way. And government will create the environment. We have started that. We have been doing that for a while. But there needs to be more private sector involvement. The BCA, I am a member, an active member of the Barbados Cricket Association. And I strongly believe there is a lot of work to be done by that association. I may be criticized after this afternoon for saying that there's more politics in the BCA than there's politics in this room. But I don't mind the critic, because at the end of the day, I joined that association as a member of a club in Ellerton named Malvern Cricket Club, because I wanted to give the guys from that community, the rural community, an opportunity to play cricket at the highest level. When community clubs are strong, in Barbados, cricket is strong. And I can tell you, there are many clubs across this country that are having challenges fielding 2 teams on a Saturday. You know, my good friend told me when I decided to pick up the presidency of Ellerton Sports and Social Academy, which is the umbrella body for Ellerton Football Club and Malvern Cricket Club, some 5-6 years ago. And the reason why I did that had nothing to do with politics. It had to do with my love for the game of cricket and the club that my father went to Barbados National Trials playing for. He's now 87 years old. Played with the likes of Charlie Griffith, his good friend, being coached by Sir Everton. And I saw a dying club. We were able to field 2 teams. As a youngster back then, we played under 19, under 15, under 23. And Malvern was a vibrant club in the 80s and the 90s. But I saw a dying cricket team. Having reigned in country cricket for so many years, it pained me. And I said, no, I can't be a member of this vibrant community and allow cricket to die. Nelson Mandela used the phrase that sports has the potential to unite the world. And we, as a country, we say that cricket unites our region. We don't say football, we say cricket. And that is why I took up that role as president of that lovely place, Ellerton Sports and Social Academy. And my focus was to get young boys back to the club. I will speak to girls shortly. It is doing pretty well, but how many clubs can we boast in rural Barbados, in St. Andrews, my good friend? How many clubs in St. Peter? And I'm just calling parishes. In St. Lucie, had a club, North Stars Cricket Club. It was a very vibrant club. Mahaika Cricket Club in the BCL. And I can go across the length and breadth of this country and call clubs where I played and I went, and I know members of those clubs that literally dwindle away simply because we're not playing sufficient cricket. And while I support this resolution to get our cricket back to a level of some level of respectability where we are champions not only in tests but one days, I have my views on T10, T20 cricket. And I would like the forum to really spend some time to discuss T20 cricket. Because if the youngsters want to be millionaires, you can't stop them. And T20 cricket have given some young men the opportunity to become millionaires, to become global citizens. But my first love is Test cricket. So we need really to shape up in this country and in this region. Recently, I heard Chris Darren publicly stating that Jamaica should take itself out of West Indies cricket. I cry shame. Chris Darren, a former cricket West Indies head, Jamaica, made that bold statement because to him, cricket is a dying head in Jamaica as it relates to the cricket in West Indies. So we have to play a lot more cricket in our schools, in our communities, and I support the member for St. Michael's South Central who asked for community centers to be fixed up and sporting facilities. heard the member who spoke about a 10-year decade where nothing was done to sporting facilities across this country. He's absolutely correct. Because I journeyed the length and breadth of my short stay in that ministry, and I saw a number of facilities across St. Peter, St. John, St. George. We fixed up some. But it would take us, and the member has a challenging task, it would take us more than 10 years to get our facilities back to some level of respectability where we left it in 2008. So, Mr. Speaker, I am calling on, I know the member has started community cricket through a former West Indies captain, not captain, wicketkeeper, Barbados captain. I won't call his name. And that program, I know Prime Minister member for St. Michael North, he spoke to me during my brief stint there on that, and I am happy to see that program being rolled out now, because it is programs like those that will bring our cricket back to some level of respectability. We must play more cricket in schools. We must bring back the Garfield Sobers. How dare us? And member for St. John, I don't make a pronouncement. But if there's one thing we have to do, and this is not you, we have to bring back this Garfield Sobers tournament, on the 19th tournament. West Indies cricket have always been good to a level of on the 19th, then we see some of our players dropping off. But we are now at a stage where we're not even playing at that level, the on the 19th. We're playing on the 19th, yes, but not enough. We need to play more cricket. Primary school cricket was a big thing when I was at primary school. I started by saying I took 5 for 12. But how many primary schools are now enrolled in cricket, Mr. Speaker? We can probably count them on our hand, member for St. John. We can probably count them on our hand. I am calling on the private sector, but I must also congratulate that gentleman, Franklin Stevenson, sorry to call his name, his academy, wonderful academy. I'm sorry I didn't have the opportunity to go and sit with him, but I would urge us to have a chat with him because he's developing some wonderful young cricketers, and I think it is a wonderful academy. But we need more of the Franklin Stevenson's academy across the length and breadth of Barbados. This brings me now to, and not a national issue, but an international issue. There are two challenges that I think we face. I heard the member for Christchurch East Central, he briefly touched on it. And I will start with the word biomechanics, but I will graduate to technology. For our cricket really to compete internationally, we have to begin to utilize more technology. We have to begin to study players and study teams. You know, one of the interesting things that I listened to, and this is really not technology, it is technology because when I heard the reason why Australia, they chose to bowl first in the recently World Cup. They studied the soil in India. They studied the soil in India. Yeah, remember for St. Peter, look at me. The soil, the turf. And it was a day-night match, Mr. Speaker, right? And they said gray soil versus, I think it was dark soil versus clear soil. When the dew gets on some of the soil, that the ball, some of the, you know, when you were bowling, as opposed to swing, the wicket gets better and gets harder in the night. And Australia, if you watch when Australia batted at the last, in the end, the ball was not doing a lot. It was not deviating, so Australia was able to play a lot of shots. So when Australia won the toss, everyone expected Australia to bat first, but the court said no. He studied the soil and he realized that the dew will not impact the dark soil because they were playing at a stadium that had dark soil. And these are some of the things that the international teams are doing. And when I read that article, I probably didn't articulate it as well as he did. But the reason why they chose to field first, because of the nature of the turf and the type of soil they were playing on. Because everyone expects that with dew being in a day and night match, when you bat last, it is more challenging for you. Now, I will end off on technology. We have to invest in technology. We have to understand that our players are probably, we will not get, and I hate to say this, but we may take a long time to generate the players like the Everton Weeks and the Worrells and the Malcolm Marshalls and the Joel Garners. And the Gordon Greenidges and the Desmond Haynes and the Emerson Trotmans and the Alvin Greenidges and the Courtney Browns, the Floyd Reefers. We may take a long while to get back there. Some of the greats, the Wes Halls, the Charlie Griffiths. We may take a long while to get back there, but what we have that we can utilize is technology. And I believe if we begin to play more cricket and we begin to study the teams like the other teams studied the West Indies. You know, there was a time when the West Indies played, every single West Indian went to England. Not only earn a living, but they were able to master the conditions. But I would boldly say that the British recognized then that these guys were mastering the conditions, and you saw the contracts dwindling away. Right, Mr. Speaker? The contracts begin to dwindle away because we then began to master the conditions in England. Viv Richards, Marshall, the other guys in the Caribbean region that played in England. And we have a formidable West Indies team. But we are not getting those opportunities now because we were too good then. We ruled the roost in England, we ruled the roost all over the world. All over the world. We played cricket anywhere and we dominated. But the guys studied us, studied the Caribbean boys. They utilized technology. And whereas we don't have the greats like we had back then, we have now to catch up with the rest of the world, like the Indians, the Australians, the New Zealanders, and bring the technology on board. $20 million in Comey? Yes, but I'm asking that the cricketing fraternity they have recognized that cricket is no longer an honor system. The players are demanding. The players are going places where they're earning and becoming millionaires. You can't stop that. But what you can do is bring some respectability back to community cricket and cricket development by investing. I also want to throw my final words to the ICC. The playing field is not level. Whereas monies that have been allocated to cricket, we, as a West Indies team, we're playing the least cricket as well. But I looked at India's schedule before the T20 World Cup, you'll see it. It is not fair to the West Indies, the distribution of money by the ICC. We need more money if we are truly to compete with the Indians and the Australians and the English and the New Zealanders and even the South Africans. It is not fair. And I know we may be small as a country, but we have a very big voice. And I know if there's one country that will advocate, I know our member for St. Michael Northeast, at some point in time, I know she will have her say with respect to how the West Indies is being treated with respect to distributions of funds as it relates to the ICC, the governing body for cricket. But while we await that, we have our backyard to clean up. We have to get our cricket back on track. And my final call to my association that I'm proud of, the Barbados Cricket Association, for over the years the work they have done. Get your act together. Stop the fighting, the in-house fighting. And I know all of us may say all our focus is on cricket development, but we can't only talk it, but we have to show it, and we have to do it in unity and in one voice. Mr. Speaker, I support this resolution that US $25 million that is going to Kensington Oval Management Inc. And I trust, Mr. Speaker, that going forward, that our cricket will return in a short space of time to the level of respectability that it was back in the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, and the 90s, and even into the 2000s. And I congratulate Shea Hope, a proud Barbadian I am, sir, the work that you are doing, 16 ODI hundreds, and I think you're one of the best cricketers in the world, and we need to support you. And with those few words, Mr. Speaker, I'm obliged.
Honourable for Christchurch East Central.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And I want to thank honourable members for their spirited contributions. As I rise to wrap up the debate, sir, I just want to remind Barbadians that the thrust that the government has embarked on in relation to how we create opportunities for active participation of our citizens and to leverage the talent, certainly, of Barbadians. We believe that clearly within the sporting space, cricket remains that sport that has afforded many Barbadians the opportunity, sir, to express themselves globally throughout time. And therefore, it is on that basis that we want to see that type of investment, not just in the infrastructure, but the programming, to be able to drive those opportunities to the fore and to create a long-lasting and sustainable legacy, sir, of excellence across the many communities in Barbados. And Barbados, sir, as you know, and Queensland is known as the Mecca of the West Indies. We want Kensington to be the Mecca of the Americas, sir. And to that extent, this investment, part of the urban regeneration investment, sir, that we see for Greater Bridgetown, and in a sense, sir, to ensure that there is a revitalization of the capital city, and therefore the environs around that would also need to be upgraded, and therefore that is the basis upon which we are making these investments, sir, to ensure that we not just host tournaments, but we have a sustainable program, sir, for driving community development, driving economic development, sir, to be able to deliver, sir, in a tangible way with respect to these types of events. Now, it goes without saying, sir, that the hosting of any World Cup, sir, is a tremendous opportunity for Barbadians to participate. And I do know that we have had a number of persons who, before, sir, had invested personally in building spaces for persons to stay. And therefore, those opportunities arise again, sir. And as you know, sir, 15 years ago, not 15, 16 years ago, sir, we did not have Airbnb and Honourable and all of those types of opportunities available to us. And therefore, I do know that the Ministry of Tourism through the BTMI, working with the Ministry of Sport, sir, are working on getting the necessary packages pulled together in order to bring the participating teams here, of which I believe there are 20. And therefore, I say to Barbadians, this is an opportunity not just for us to refurbish and re-energize Kensington, but this is genuinely, sir, an opportunity where if you have space, you can alert the appropriate authorities to be part of, sir, the benefits that can actively be derived, sir, in relation to this. And I say to all those Barbadians, as you know, sir, we are preparing for the gathering of 2025 again, sir, that this is still an opportunity for you to come home to, sir, and hopefully see the West Indies win a cricket tournament ahead of the gathering in 2025, sir. And therefore, as we seek to create the impetus, sir, for delivering growth and to see growth. And I know, sir, that there's been a lot of people asking about where the growth is going to come from and all of that, sir. And as we see the numbers progress week by week, month by month, sir, we hope that Barbadians would appreciate that we are a small, open economy. We welcome people, sir, whether it is Bajans from abroad or their families and friends or strangers, visitors, sir, that we welcome to this country. Barbados must remain hospitable, and therefore it is that protection of the personal investment that we must make, sir, in ensuring that we keep the place safe for ourselves, for those who visit us, sir, to ensure that people know that Barbados is the place, sir, that you can come and have an enjoyable visit, a safe visit, and in order to allow us to deliver, sir, on that motif, if you like, sir, that Barbados is genuinely, sir, just beyond your imagination. And therefore, to that extent, sir, I urge Barbadians to get involved, reach out to the various authorities in order to see how you can participate, sir, in what I know will be a successful hosting of the World Cup, sir. We will welcome thousands of people here, and we want those people to continue to come back to Barbados year after year after year in order to ensure then, sir, that during that summer period that we get those numbers up to winter period level, sir, so that we can see true capacity utilization of the space that we do have, so that the ordinary Barbadians can see a greater certainty who participate within that sector, sir, and therefore this is part of the thrust in order to allow us to be able to get on that path, sir. And so, sir, with those very few words, I beg to move that this resolution do now pass.
The question is that this resolution do now pass. All those honourable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it. This resolution stands passed. Honourable Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to move that this sitting be adjourned until Tuesday, the 12th of December at 10 a.m.
The question is that this honourable chamber be adjourned until Tuesday, the 12th day of December 2023 at 10 a.m. in the forenoon. All those honourable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Meeting, the ayes have it. This honourable chamber stands adjourned until Tuesday, the 12th day of December 2023 at 10 a.m. in the forenoon.